Welcome to the IDP Plus Advice Show. Today we're going to focus on the Week 3 IDP snap counts. We're going to talk about IDP defensive player lineman positioning. We're going to talk about injuries. We're going to talk about waivers. All that stuff we're going to talk about. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. And glad to have you all. And if you're new, welcome to the family. Glad to have you with us. I am your host, Ricky Rod Reed. You can find me at RickyRod66 on X. I am joined, as always, by the IDP knowledgeable one, Mr. Shawn Teague, who you can find at Shawn8386 on Twitter. We're thrilled to be with you again today, here on Tuesday, September 23rd, to recap Week 3 and share some thoughts for Week 4 and beyond based on some of those Week 3 happenings. As I mentioned in the opening, we're going to talk about snap counts, positional alignments, injuries, replacements, you name it kind of thing. We're going to go through all of that. And of course, as always, we ask if you enjoy this show to please give it a thumbs up. If you don't, please don't give us a thumbs down. And subscribe to the channel as well on YouTube. And as we've been continuing to do, and as we've been doing, and we'll continue to do, Shawn and I will be responding to any questions or comments or suggestions or whatever you may have on this YouTube channel specific to this show. All right, Shawn, you doing good today, bud?
Good enough, Ricky.
Good enough. All right. I like the way you're going with that. And we're going to do things a little bit differently. We have typically started with the AFC. But we are going to start with the NFC this time. And of course, probably the biggest IDP news from the weekend, as we're going to start with the 49ers, who played the Cardinals, and the 49ers played 66 snaps. And that biggest news that I was starting to allude to was the Nick Bosa torn ACL, out for the year, big loss. You just can't replace a Nick Bosa, can you, Shawn?
No, that's tough because he was one of the top edge rushers taken in the draft. He's been producing, and it sucks, especially to lose one this early.
Yeah, exactly right. And so the only positive about it happening this early is that he might be ready for the start of next year. That's about as positive as it can get in terms of a glass half full. Now, Mykel Williams played 65% of the snaps this past week. Sam Okianowo, no, something like along those lines.
I didn't do my homework on that one.
Even if I did, I probably would have butchered it anyway. Let's just call him Sam O. He played 64% of the snaps. Bryce Huff played 55% of the snaps. Yetur Gross-Matos, still recovering from that knee injury, was at the 33% mark. Now, what was interesting about Sam O, he played a lot more against the run than the pass. He played about 80% of the run snaps, 51% of the pass snaps. Bryce Huff was kind of the opposite, and he played about 32% of the run snaps and 68% of the pass snaps, is how it ended up working out. Yetur Gross-Matos has had a little bit success in the past. Shawn, are there any of these 49er defensive ends that you would take a chance on? Or would you go to other teams most likely?
Probably going to other teams. Now, if I'm in a really deep league, Bryce Huff is the one name I think I might give a chance just because of his familiarity with the system and Robert Saleh in general. Outside of that, I'm probably looking elsewhere right now.
Yeah, and even with Huff, it's probably a situation where it would have to be a sack-heavy scoring league to use him as well. And now if you're in a tackle-heavy league and you were desperate and it was really deep from the 49ers, it would probably be Sam O, which I'm not going to even try and say his name again, as you noticed. So because he's more likely to be playing rundowns and get the tackles, where Huff is probably the bigger plays. Okay, moving to their linebackers, Warner and Winters continue to play 100% of the snaps. Fred Warner led the team with 11 tackles. D. Winters comes in next with 8 tackles. Winters continues to just put up, those kind of solid numbers every week. He's not going to, not typically a linebacker 1, but somebody roughly a linebacker 3, Shawn.
Yeah, he's got the consistency to sneak up into the LB2s with some of the guys that are more, peak and valley. Just his consistent lines there are gonna have him finish strong, barring injuries.
And I think the more he plays and the more experience he gets, I think we'll see these numbers bump up as the year progresses slightly. So your thoughts about him sneaking into the low end too might be a good possibility there. Now Upton Stout only played 49% of the snaps. He's their slot cornerback. Pinnock and Siegel played 100% of the snaps. Now the thing with Siegel I wanted to call out is that he played only 41% of the snaps deep. So he played 59% close to the line of scrimmage this week, which was really, really nice utilization for him, although the numbers didn't necessarily work out that way. Jason Pinnock had played 58% deep. So that kind of wraps up the 49ers, and next we're going to move to the Seahawks here. And the Seahawks played my Saints, and it's pretty embarrassing when they're we have some of these guys that are struggling with it. We got a Thursday night game. There's no way we need to waste our time playing them against the Saints. Sharp defense, but of course, Julian Love, Nick Monwari, sat them all out. Didn't matter. They destroyed my Saints. Okay, but all three of those gentlemen, well, four if you want to include Charbonnet, all practice on Monday and Tuesday. Quote practice in quotes. Um, and I'm expecting that all three of them will probably play against the Cardinals on Thursday night. Shawn, are you hearing anything different related to that?
No, it looks like everybody is, like I say, getting limited practice in, and that's it can go either way, but it's a positive sign for all of them to be already jumping in. So thanks to the Saints for that mini bye week to help them recover.
Exactly right. Oh boy, the Saints and the Giants, Week 5. Quick tangent.
Oh,
The loser of that one will be the number one overall pick in the NFL draft. You can mark it down in Week 5. Okay, now moving to the linebackers for the Seahawks. Um, the Seahawks played still 73 snaps. The defense did against the Saints because they were scoring so quickly, whether it be on returns or on short fields or the big plays, whatever it was. So the Seahawks still played a lot of snaps on defense, interestingly enough, despite the blowout. Ernest Jones played 92% of the snaps. He led the team with only, though, a whopping 7 tackles. Tyrese Knight is the story here. He played only 59% of the snaps. Drake Thomas played 49%. Both of those two finished with 5 tackles. Now, Knight played 66% of the snaps on first and second down, but only 35% on third down. Drake Thomas was the opposite, where he played 41% on first and second down and 77% on third down. I think we have us a platoon situation, Shawn. I don't think we can put Tyrese Knight into our lineups.
I was already off Therese Knight just because he lingers on that lower 70% of snaps anyway. I am a little hesitant to say it's a platoon just yet, just because of all the safety injuries. And Drake Thomas, I believe, is a converted safety uh, and is playing linebacker now. So maybe this was to help in that regard. So maybe if if we get Love back, Emanwari, Witherspoon, if all these guys are back, will that rotation continue? You can't feel good about it if you do have Therese Knight, but definitely
Ex-
something to watch.
Exactly right. And, he's someone, if you could find a sucker right now to take him from a trade perspective, go for it. Because even if I think Jones is out, I think we see Drake Thomas probably playing in the middle, wearing the dot and not Knight. Okay, moving to the defensive line. Yunchino Nwosu, second game back, still played in the mid 20% of snaps. What was interesting is Boy Mafe has dropped from 74% in week 1 to 68% to now 40% of the snaps. Now, it was a blowout game, so we got to be careful on some of these takeaways. But Boy Mafe, for those that were hoping this is finally the year Boy Mafe, boy, oh boy, I don't know if I'm believing in Boy Mafe right now. All right, man, I'm just full of it today. All right, Byron Murphy, second week in a row with a big game, including 3 tackles and a sack, with 70% of the snaps. A sack previous week, a sack this week. Firmer first round pick is being utilized less as a nose this year, more in that three technique role. Shawn, I think we have someone here that is startable in defensive tackle required positions here with Byron Murphy.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's playing against some really good ones also that are helping take a little pressure off of him. So Leonard Williams, Jared Reed, those guys have been big IDP assets themselves in the past, and a little bit of a passing the torch here.
Exactly right. So love us some Byron Murphy, folks. So one of the things I talked about is we might, earlier in the show that we're going to talk about things about waivers. I may not necessarily use the word waivers, or Shawn might not either. But when we say something like that, that's your sign. That's someone to go pick up off of waivers if they're sitting out there. Okay, particularly in defensive tackle required leagues. Okay, moving to the defensive secondary. Reek Woolen and Josh Joby continue to be the top two cornerbacks. With Witherspoon sitting out, Darian Kendrick was the slot cornerback. Now, he will be the odd man out, even though he has played fairly well with a couple of interceptions past defenses over the past couple of weeks with Witherspoon out. But don't count on Kendrick, particularly Witherspoon is live. Kobe Bryant played 92% of the snaps. He, like Ernest Jones, slat out, those last several snaps, that 8% that they missed. That was just, they finally took him out of the game of the blowout. Ty Okada was the one that played 100% of the snaps he was the starter with Kobe Bryant. But once again, with Julian Love expected back and or Nicky Manwari, we're not going to go ahead and chase on Ty Okada. Even if so let's say Manwari and Love don't play. In a deep league, would you consider Okada, or are you looking somewhere else, Shawn?
I would probably give him consideration just based on how deep Kobe Bryant is playing. That puts Okada automatically up near the line, so he's in play for those run stops and whatnot. So deep leagues, I'm looking at him. Most other leagues, there should be some other options out there though.
Yeah, so I do want to clarify. Kobe Bryant played once again 80, in the 80% deep range. This week it was 87% deep. I guess the Saints had to play deep. I have no idea.
Deep was 7 yards this week, guys.
Yeah, I guess. Okada's deep snaps were similar to Julian Love. Okada was in the 66% range. Love had been in the low 60s the first couple of weeks. So Okada's not playing a ton close to the line. All right. So moving on to the Rams here. And the Rams played 67 snaps against the Eagles. And I'm going to quick tangent for a second because it's something I wanted to do and I didn't have a chance, but I want to share with our listening and watching audience. I saw it on Twitter, and unfortunately, I didn't capture the name of who said it, and I wanted to go validate myself with some calculations. But someone posted that the typical 63.5 to 64 snaps per game was actually on the lower side. That the average per game of snaps for defenses were actually higher, which would mean offense were higher as well, kind of thing. I haven't gone out to validate that myself, but intuitively it does feel right. So that's just something to keep in mind. So when we talk about 67 snaps, that might be the new norm for this season because there's more dinking and dunking, less deep passes, et cetera, more, keeping the clocks moving. Let me say that again. Keeping these longer drives going and more snaps as a result. So anyway, it's something we'll try and validate for you all, but something to keep in mind, Shawn.
I would say the lack of superstar quarterback play has really went down. So you're not seeing these long passes, these big shootouts as well. Like you say, it's more dink and dunk, chew the clock up, whole possession. You don't have these gunslingers out here anymore. So that's the NFL's had to change. This is that change, that shift. It's the 18 play drives like we seen Monday night.
Yep, 18 plays, 90, and a couple of 95 yarders that the Lions had.
Yeah,
Exactly right.
very
All
impressive.
right. So moving back to the Rams. So thank you for that public service announcement, everybody. Nate Landman played 94% of the snaps, but only had 3 tackles. He did get a fumble recovery that helped his stats a little bit. Omar Spates was up to 78%, his highest so far this year. The past couple of weeks were 71 and 62%. But still, that's probably the peak we'll see of Spates in that number 2 linebacker position. Shawn, Landman with only 3 tackles on 94% of the snaps at 67 total snaps for the team. Very disappointing. Is this an outlier, you think, for Landman?
I think so. He's been fairly solid up to this point. Like I said, the big play there, kind of the fumble recovery, helped kind of make up a little bit, but just a weird dud of a game for him this week. So I'm not panicking just yet.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I do want to apologize to the audience for is there's a couple of players that um, I had suggested from like either last week or in the start sit show not to play potentially this week. And one of the things that I typically do is I wait until after week 3 before I say, let's start sitting our studs. So AJ Brown was one that we got a question. Now the person had 3 other good wide receivers as well, and he asked if we were crazy if he was crazy to sit AJ Brown. We said no, he wasn't. And for 2.5 quarters or so, that was the correct answer until the Eagles fell far behind and they changed their whole plan of attack and actually started throwing the ball and throwing it downfield. Jared Verse was another one that I was, kind of not exactly supporting because he was off to a slower start. And I think I suggested for someone to sit him out. And usually I like to wait at least 3 weeks, particularly my studs, before I tell people that. So lesson learned from Ricky in terms of giving you all guidance and something for you all to consider as well. Shawn, looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, to your point there, he wasn't doing anything until I believe it was Lane Johnson went out. So once that injury kind of kicked in, then the floodgates started opening. They started getting these sacks. But up until that point, the Eagles were not a very good matchup these first couple of weeks. So we're still learning. We're still trying to figure it out. So
Yep.
injuries
Now,
happen during the game and change everything.
while I was following the sword, that is exactly where I was going to go in terms of, but to cut us some slack in all fairness, you
Yeah,
know, they were kind of, struggling until Lane Johnson left. And then all of a sudden, Young starts going off even more so in Verse. Um, both of them had 6 tackles and a sack. Verse also had a forced fumble. Young stayed in that 78% range. Verse was up from 65% last week, back up to the 78% range, which was fantastic for him from a playing time perspective, which was another reason we're a little bit down on him because we were aware there's a potential injury because Braden Fisk the week before had only played in the 20% range the week before, and we didn't hear anything about an injury. So anyway, okay, enough excuses about why we didn't recommend Verse. Now, Braden Fisk played a limited amount of time. Once again, this week he only played 37% of the snaps. He wasn't limited in practices throughout the week. Didn't really do anything during the game. He's one that definitely want to sit out. Let's get him back to 100% healthy before we try and play him in defensive tackle required leagues. In the secondary, none of the outside cornerbacks, the quote true cornerbacks, played more than 80-ish% for the Rams. So we're staying away from all of them. Quentin Lake has safety designation. He did play 100% of the snaps. He typically plays that slot cornerback position. And I have a feeling this was Quentin Lake's probably best game he's going to have all year, in which he had 6 tackles and 4 pass defenses. I think that's the best we're going to see from Quentin Lake this year. Cam Curl, 99% of the snaps, and once again, a great game with 9 tackles. Kinchin, 87% of the snaps, second on the team with 7 tackles. So he's been playing in that high 80, low 90 range. Kinchin's has been playing 71% of the snaps deep. Well, this last week it was 71% of the snaps deep. Curl only 46%. Shawn, Cam Curl, he's playing like he could be a top 12 finishing safety at the end of this year.
this is what we expected him to do last year. So we're a year late on getting the production we wanted, but it's something we knew he could do based on his years in Washington there. So he's essentially the second linebacker out of this group, more or less. But yeah, it's fantastic. He's well on his way to a top 12 finish. Again,
And the
barring injuries.
Yep, of course, boring injuries. But another thing to call out about him is that he is actually tied for third among defensive backs in combined tackles. He has 26 tied with Derwin James and Trevin Moehrig. So and he has a heck of a lot more tackles than Foye Oluokun and Zaire Franklin, but I digress. We'll talk about them more a little bit later. But that's how well he's doing. So he's in the top 25 in overall tackles for the league. Okay, moving to the Cardinals, who played 65 snaps against the 49ers. Josh Sweat has now had a sack 2 weeks in a row. However, when you look at the snap counts for the edges for the Cardinals, the rookie Jordan Burch was first this week at 58%, Baron Browning 46%, Zaven Collins 45%, and then you get to Josh Sweat at 42%. Is Sweat going to get a sack every week with that limited playing time and we're going to get lucky, Shawn? Or is this one we're trying to sell high on Mr. Sweat? Or do you
Yeah,
think his playing time is going to change?
I don't see a change. Since Gannon's been the coach there in Arizona, this has been his thing. Rotating edge rushers, rotating defensive tackles, all defensive linemen. Basically, that's all he's done is rotate them. So if you can find somebody that'll give you just about anything for Josh Sweat, take it. So I
Yep.
don't see this getting better.
Yep. Try and sell high for people that aren't familiar with how the scoring systems work and with this low snap count and the sacks will only going to happen so much for so long here. Mac Wilson back at 100%, but Akeem Davis Gaither, after being at 37% week one, 62% week two, actually played 80% of the snaps week three. That is just something that's very unusual for this Jonathan Gannon Cardinals defense over the last few years with the second linebacker position. I personally think that's because of all these cornerback injuries, and we'll talk about some of the secondary playing here in a second, that has ADG on the field that much. And I have to admit, Mac Wilson proved me wrong with 12 tackles and 2 pass defenses during this game. I've been kind of saying, well, typical Mac Wilson line is 8 tackles, 4 solo, 4 assists, or something along those lines. He actually came through with 12 this week. ADG had 8 tackles himself, ADG being Akeem Davis Gaither as a side note. Okay, do you know who is tied for 10th in the league in tackles combined, Shawn?
It
You
better
could
not
probably.
be Mac Wilson.
It is Mac Wilson. He is tied for 10th in the league with 28 tackles.
Oh my gosh, that feels
Yes,
gross.
it does. But remember, you and I have been talking about that Kaiser White role has been a
Yeah,
linebacker 2 type of role, and Mac Wilson is playing in that role. And as
just
long
consistent numbers every week. I mean, that's getting a high floor guy, and then you find you a big play guy to pair with that. That's a good way to build your teams.
It's not flashy, it's not sexy, but
It's
it's
not.
it's working for Mac Wilson, folks. So he might be someone you go and target from a trade perspective. That because of the unsexiness of the name and people not realizing how well he's doing, you might be able to get him. So just a trade consideration. Of course, Garrett Williams ended up going on IR this past week, and with that, what we saw is Max Melton starting in one cornerback. Denzel Burke and Keitrell Clark kind of did a rotation at the other cornerback spot. And no cornerback truly took over the slot role. What we saw is more 3 safety looks with Buda Baker and Jalen Thompson playing 100% of the snaps as they typically do, but Dadrian Taylorson Dimerson, who I've called out before on a past show, that he's someone I think I'd stash for Dynasty with Jalen Thompson being a free agent at the end of this year. But he played 62% of the snaps, and he played mostly as the 5th defensive back. What was interesting in terms of lineup positioning, now Taylor Dimison did play 55% deep, but what we saw is Jalen Thompson played 45% of his snaps in the slot. Buda Baker played 22% of the snaps in the slot, and both of them only played in roughly the mid 20s deep. So we saw Baker and Thompson coming down. We saw Taylor Dimerson playing deep. If Baker Thompson gets hurt, that someone I'm going to go after very aggressively will be Dadrian Taylor Dimerson as a side note. Shawn, anything, and so going full circle back to the Akeem Davis Gaither with that cornerback situation that they had, because Will Johnson was also out. He did not play because he had an injury, and he looks like he might not play again on Thursday night. That might be an opportunity still for ADG to maybe repeat what he did this past week, or would you say pass on that?
I feel like this might be a little bit of an outlier just with the way the 49ers had to run their team, and they're not looking to pass deep. It's dink, it's dunk, it's all short. Uh, they have no real receivers playing right now. So I think the Cardinals just moved everybody up close and said, "We dare you to throw it deep," and that was just kind of the scheme for this past weekend. So I don't feel comfortable with ADG this next game.
Okay. But we're going to put Mac Wilson in depending on the size
But
of our leagues.
yeah, steady Mac.
All righty. Now we're going to move to the NFC South. We're going to move to the New Orleans Saints here. They played only 57 snaps, as you would expect. The Seahawks played a whole lot, as we talked about earlier. And it was because of the big plays like punt returns and big plays on offense. And yeah, it was pretty bad. So both Carl Granderson and Cam Jordan, because of the blowout situation, both of them were down to 60% of the snaps. Of course, Chase Young was inactive yet again. Boy, that 3-year, $51 million contract is looking really good so far for Chase Young that the Saints gave him. I digress. As a team, they only had 2 quarterback hits. And basically, Granderson and Jordan did nothing this past week. So maybe they need the home crowd and to play other so-so teams like Arizona and San Francisco who were struggling with injuries. Maybe that's the only way they can do something. I digress. I'm still high on Granderson, particularly for his tackle floor. But boy, that was just a very disappointing performance. Demario Davis played 93% of the snaps before they took him out. He had 11 tackles, but only 2 of those were solo. Pete Werner was all the way down to 74% of the snaps, where he had been in the mid 80s to low 90s, but he still led the team with 13 tackles and he got a fumble recovery on top of that. Demario Davis, as a side note, is tied for 5th in the league in tackles right now. So Demario Davis is putting up good numbers in the way the Saints offense is. And as teams continue to see how Rattler's being used and all this dink and dunk stuff, where you have Olave getting 10 catches for about 60 yards. 6 yards per catch is horrible. Jawan Johnson getting like 9 catches for 60 yards. Eventually that's going to catch up, and the Saints defense will be on the field more and more and more here. Moving to secondary, they call him Kool-Aid McKinstry. Right now, I think I'm calling him Sour Lemonade McKinstry because he's been sucking so bad.
Not all Kool-Aid is good.
Yeah, Kool-Aid is a step up from sour lemonade, just to be clear with our audience here. He only played 70% of the snaps. It looked like he got benched with Quincy Riley coming into his spot and playing 32% of the snaps. Isaac Yedem, however you pronounce it, my apologies, but he continued to play the nickel cornerback, but only played 42% of the snaps. Seattle continues to play many multi-tight end situations, plus they were running the ball a lot late in the game, etc. So Yedem didn't play very much. But if you've been playing with Kool-Aid McKinstry, I'd be really worried because if you're thinking he's like this year's Jalen Jones, they're going to keep on picking on him, he'll get a bunch of tackles, but he might not even be playing. Shawn, you're shaking your head there, bud.
Nah, I was reading something else. Ignore that.
Okay, I will ignore that, and I'll move on to Alontae Taylor, who played 100. Well, he played 91% of the snaps, but he played 52% of those out wide. He only played 23% of his snaps in the slot. But he did play another 19% in that box. So he's 40% close to the line of scrimmage, but he did have 52% wide, 6% free. That's not the kind of usage we want for Alontae Taylor. And with the way Kool-Aid's been playing, there's a chance that Alontae Taylor plays even more outside. And do we see maybe Ugo Amadi moving into that slot role, as happened last year when Alontae Taylor was hurt? So something to just keep an eye on. Now, Justin Reed played 91% of the snaps, and the good news, he played 63% close to the line of scrimmage, which is fantastic for him. But only had 4 tackles, which didn't do us much good. Jonas Sanker, the other safety, played 70% of the snaps deep. Week 2, he played 59% deep. This was in the opposite direction. Not a good sign, while Reed played more closer to the line of scrimmage in previous weeks. So not good for Sanker. If you took a flyer on him, maybe, and I did in one of my leagues, he'll be someone I'll be releasing and looking for someone else. Shawn, any argument with that, man?
No, I'm right there with you. I'm doing the same this week.
All right, good deal. All right, moving to the Falcons here. Another game that was a blowout, and I have to admit, this was one that, boy, I thought sure the Falcons were going to kill the Panthers, and I thought it was going to be like a 30-7 game in favor of the Falcons, and it was a 30-0 shutout for the Panthers. The Falcons defense still only played 58 snaps during the game. So when there's blowouts, and I didn't mention it previously, but always have to be careful with the takeaways from things like snap counts and tackles and all when we have these kind of games, of which this was one. Now, remember last week? So let's talk about the Falcons defense here. When on national TV they destroyed the Vikings, there was all this excitement about their pass rush. They had finally figured out. They signed Leonard Floyd. They had James Pierce and Jalen Walker and Zach Harrison and blah, blah, blah. Well, this week against the Panthers offensive line, which had a couple of people put on injured reserve as a side note, both their center and one of their guards. So they had a couple of backups there. Equan knew the left tackle was, getting back into shape after being out from an appendix situation. With all that, the Falcons had a total of 3 quarterback hits, only one from a defensive lineman. That was Floyd. The other 2 came from Caden Ellis and Jesse Bates. Caden Ellis got a sack on that one, by the way. And that was it. So there's a big difference when you're going against Justin Skule and his backup when he got hurt at left tackle, and a rookie quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, who was holding the ball way too long, versus how Wentz was getting the ball out very quickly in less than 2.5 seconds on most snaps and so forth. He was getting it out. Now, the snap count for the linemen, the Harrisons, the Floyds, Walkers, Pierce, were all roughly about the same. Jalen Walker did play all his snaps on the D-line, none in the box as a side note. But let's go to linebackers. The good news is Caden Ellis, he had a return to Caden Ellis form from a stat perspective, and then he had 9 tackles. He had that sack I mentioned earlier, but he still had 23% of his snaps on the D-line, which is not what we want to see for Caden Ellis. So that's one thing we've got to be careful about. And he's one, Shawn, he did have a good game here against the Panthers, but I'm really nervous. Is he someone you're going to try and sell high off this game, or are you going to think you're going to be a little bit more patient and hope he continues to put out these kind of numbers?
Yeah, I'm holding on to him. I am going to give him another shot. Still a contract year, so I mean, I'm still thinking he's pretty motivated here. I'm hoping this is being week 3. The first couple of weeks in the last several years have been kind of an extension of the preseason. So we're seeing teams do some weird things. About week 3, the defense is catching up with the offenses. Just the rhythm's coming. Everything's starting to get figured out. So I feel like some of these guys that are finally breaking out the way we expect them to, it just took a game or 2 to get going. So I feel Ellis will be just fine. I really do.
I have to admit, I'm not feeling as positive as you are, Shawn. I hope you are right for my Caden Ellis shares.
I
But
have a
right
few as
now,
well.
I don't feel so great. And if I could use him to flip him, um, I might do so, to be honest with you. But we'll see how the season plays on, folks. 2 very different opinions. You all form your own, but we want to make sure you have the data and the information for y'all to move forward with your decision making. Divine Diablo did play 100% of the snaps, not as productive stat-wise, but he is on the field 100% of the snaps, and he is staying in that box role, which is good for Diablo. In the secondary, Bates and Watts were both at 98%. Bates only played 35% deep. Watts only played 42% deep. So great news from a utilization perspective. Watts came through with 9 tackles, 8 of which were solo. Billy Bowman played 66% of the snaps, but he is basically their slot corner as well, as we've been talking about on previous shows. And D. Alford was the person that replaced A.J. Terrell at cornerback this week. We're not chasing D. Alford as a side note, but just wanted to keep people in the loop that Alford is not playing, even though you've seen him on the field, he's not playing that slot role as he did last year. That's still Billy Bowman. Alford played 90% of his snaps on the outside. Moving to the Buccaneers here, who played a very nice 69 snaps against the Jets. Kalijah Cansey went on IR. Logan Hall got hurt after 32% of the snaps. That meant Elijah Roberts jumped the rookie, who they're very high on, jumped up to 57% of the snaps. Greg Gaines jumped up to 52% of the snaps. Elijah Simmons, who they just signed up from the practice squad, played 16% of the snaps. Shawn, no Cansey, no Hall. They still have Vita Vea, but we're not even going after the rookie Elijah Roberts, correct?
Oh no, no, not until we see some type of production. We've seen some usage, but he didn't give us much outside of a quarterback hit and a deflection. So I'm going to need to see about a handful of tackles each game before I pick anybody up.
Yep. Now moving to the linebackers, and I know that's what a lot of our audience really wants to hear about from the Bucks' perspective. In week 2, we saw Deion Jones play the last 2 series in place of Servacia Dennis. So we said exercise caution if you had other options to play someone else other than Servacia Dennis. On the positive side of things, Servacia ended up playing 100% of the snaps. Levante David played 98% of the snaps. So Servacia still played 100% of the snaps. But if you took our advice and sat Servacia Dennis with caution, the good news is you only missed out on 3 tackles and a quarterback hit and 1 pass defense. So it's not like you had a huge game of 7 or 8 tackles. So you didn't miss out on any high-end productivity. And now we know better and we can put him into the lineup. Levante David out of nowhere, the old man kind of flipped the switch this week and had 11 tackles and a sack. But Shawn, my question for you is, are you feeling better about putting Servacia Dennis back into your lineup in a deeper league where you probably play like 4 linebackers or maybe even 3?
Yeah, I would feel comfortable putting him back in. We did caution people that this was a bad matchup for linebackers anyway. So not just the fact that he was potentially getting benched or getting ready to rotate with Deion Jones. It was a bad matchup. So the stat line for Levante David is quite the surprise for everything that he pulled off. So that was an outlier. That wasn't supposed to happen this week. So but yeah, I
Exactly.
feel comfortable with Dennis going forward, at least for the short term until he screws up again. And
Yeah, and as a side note, I'm not banking on Levante David having similar production as the year moves on. As a side note, folks.
he'll probably do it once or twice again, and we're not going to know when.
Yeah, exactly right. Another one that maybe you try and trade off of a top performance here. Okay, moving to the secondary, Jamel Dean had that one big play, which he had one additional tackle, but he had the pick 6 with all the interception return yards for those in big play scoring system. That was fantastic. Almost caused me to lose in the Kings Classic game because he put up so much points on that one freaking play. Luckily, I held on. Um, but he only played actually 74% of the snaps. Benjamin Morrison, the rookie out of Notre Dame, played 26% of the snaps. Now, the game never really was a full blowout to the point that Morrison would have played that much. I didn't see anything with Jamel Dean being injured either. So I think we have a little bit of a platoon. Don't get sucked into, boy, Jamel Dean had the second most points at cornerback this past week. Probably most likely in your leagues, Isaiah Rodgers was probably first. Um, and so don't go chasing Jamel Dean. Shawn?
Yeah, I'm with you. If anybody, I'm taking McCollum out of this group because he gets picked on all game by everybody, and they keep putting him on the field. So you would think this would be the opposite, where McCollum would lose time, not Dean. So yeah, I'm curious to see what's going on there, but I'm not chasing either one right now.
Yeah, and McCullum got a new contract, by the way, as a side note, right before the year started. But they continue to target him, and he comes up with, he got 9 tackles this past week, if I remember correctly, off the
Also
top of my
those.
head.
Yep.
Yep. So McCullum would be the one, not Dean. Now move to the safety position. Both Tyke Smith and Antoine Winfield played 100% of the snaps. Now Tyke had 7 tackles. Winfield only had 3, but I'll bet you a bunch of people watched Red Zone saw Winfield get that sack. You and I have actually recommended dropping Winfield, and they're probably a little bit PO'd because he got this sack, but still, he only had 3 tackles. Now, the one good thing, though, for him this week was that he only played 49% of the snaps deep, where in the previous weeks he was 74%, 67%. And actually, Tyke Smith played a little bit more deep, where he played 51% of the snaps deep, where he had been in that 33 to 40% range playing deep the first couple of weeks. Shawn, any regrets on the Winfield guidance in terms of, now we did give him some much better safeties to pick up. We weren't just dropping Winfield willy-nilly. There was other safeties that people were picking up in his stead. But would you go back and pick him up if you dropped him based on this, or no?
No, no. His production is too inconsistent this year, and we've seen he only had 3 tackles. The sack, the quarterback hits. I mean, those type things are what saved his day. Outside of that, then he looked like a guy you would drop. So, no regrets. If you dropped him, don't go chasing him back. Just be happy with Trayvon Merrick or whoever we told you to pick up.
That's exactly right, Shawn. I'm 100% aligned on that. Um, and once again, these big plays, interceptions, for example, pick sixes in particular, look, these things are not repeatable. They jack up the points for 1 week for those players. And so don't go chase them with your fab budget. And more importantly, if there's some sucker out there you can try and trade them to, go for it at these cornerback positions. Now let's move to the Panthers, who played 66 snaps against the Falcons. Obviously, a blowout game, as we talked about, but there were a few interesting takeaways. Patrick Jones was inactive. DJ Wanham played 73% of the snaps, but Nick Scorton, the rookie out of Texas A&M and previous to that Purdue, played 85% of the snaps. Now, he didn't do much with it. He had 1 tackle and 1 pass defense, but a lot of playing time. So if he can continue to develop, that could be good. Maybe we're stashing him on taxi squads and in deep league and dynasty leagues in particular, but we're not putting him on the field even with that kind of snap count. Princely Umanamilian from Ole Miss and previous to that Florida played 52%, and then DJ Johnson and Coombe picked up a few snaps as well. So big jumps in percent of snaps for a lot of these guys, but that was because Patrick Jones was inactive. But once again, just not a whole lot of production from these Panthers here, folks. Moving to the interior defensive line, Derek Brown and Ashawn Robinson both dropped to around 50% in snap count because of the blowout of the game. But Shawn, Derek Brown was someone that you and I were both very high on coming into the season. Of course, he missed last year with the injury, but he had the full year to recover, not just half a year, whatever. The year before that, led the interior defensive lineman in tackles, but now here we are with not much productivity from Derek Brown. Or is he someone you think you're buying low on, or you're giving up on?
Um, I guess Dynasty. I'm probably gonna hold on to him. Maybe try to buy low. I feel like defensive tackle is something you can kind of stream, similar to a cornerback. If you don't have one of the top guys, there's no point really kind of holding on to somebody. Uh, it, man, the best games he had during that 100 tackle season or whatever it was against the Falcons. So I was expecting 5-6 tackles just to show that he's coming back. The season, we're 3 weeks in, he's comfortable, we're rolling, and we're still not seeing it yet. So redraft, cut him. You don't need him if he's not producing. Same thing like we said with Winfield. If they're not giving us the numbers, don't need them on our team.
Byron Murphy, Derek Brown?
Byron Murphy.
Absolutely. Okay. All righty. Christian Roseboom had a typical Christian Roseboom line: 100% of the snaps, 9 tackles, 6 solo, 3 assisted. Trevin Wallace, Week 1, 86% of snaps. Week 2, 76%. Week 3, all the way down to 58%. And that's not just because of the blowout, folks. And with that, he only had 4 tackles. Trevin Wallace, Tyrese Knight, say good night to both of them.
Yep, absolutely. Don't need either one of them.
Okay, we're going to come to Teddy Buchanan a little bit later, but Teddy Buchanan over both those guys right now?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's an easy call, and we'll explain why later. So stay tuned when we get to the Ravens. All right, moving to the cornerbacks. Shaw Smith Wade, his playing time this week jumped up to 91%. Falcons have been playing a lot of 3 wide, so he was on the field a lot. And as a result, he had 5 tackles and he got that pick 6. Prior to this, he had been he would played 56 of the snaps. We're not going to chase Shaw Smith Wade, folks. Let's just be real clear on that. And at the safety position, we just love the Trevin Moehrig alignment. He only played 15% of the snaps deep, 85% close to the line, which is absolutely phenomenal. Love that. Would like to have seen more productivity, only having 6 tackles. Now, he and Nick Scott both only played 89% of the snaps because of the blowout, but still would like to see a little bit more in this game. Lathan Ransom jumped up from 22% of the snaps to 52%. Part of that was because of the blowout, but part of that he was used on the field a little bit more, and he did have 5 tackles. Now, Ransom, as he's been playing, he has been playing mostly deep. Those that 52% of the snaps, he played 83% deep. So if he does take the field at some point in place of Nick Scott, he's going to be playing deep. Maybe harder to get that productivity compared to what Moehrig is. Shawn, we're still thinking Moehrig as a top 12.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do
We
you think
just
we're stashing Lathan Ransom or not yet? We're not stashing the safety.
if he's going to play that much deep, it's going to be hard to get the weekly consistent production. So probably not. Definitely somebody to keep an eye on in case that does change. And he's probably the reason Trevin Wallace lost some snaps here. They're going more 3 safeties. So somebody to keep an eye on, but I'm not
Not making a
stashing the
move yet.
safety really. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All righty. So that completes the NFC South. Before we move to the NFC North, I want to remind you that Shawn and I are doing our weekly start sit show every Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central. We've had incredible engagement on the show. If you joined us this past Sunday, you would have learned why Shawn lost his mustache as part of the show, along with a lot of other great advice. So we did fall on the sword a little bit early on a couple of things, but there were a lot of other things that we were spot on correct. I might even hit on 1 or 2 of them as we go through the show here. But come join us, even if you don't have questions yourself. There might be some things because people are asking, to compare certain players or rank them, and we're giving those rankings and our thoughts as well. And it might give you some thoughts and some people to pick up off the waiver wire right before the games kick off. So come join us 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central for the Week 4 Start Sit Show. The other thing I want to just tell everybody real quick, um, I'm on grandbaby alert. I've mentioned it on a previous show a while back, but there's a chance anywhere between tomorrow and October 14th that I'll become a grandfather. Hopefully, I don't miss any of the shows and hopefully, I won't be impacted. But I just want to give a heads up. It's part of the reason I asked you all to follow up on Ricky Rod 66 because if the show will be preempted and if Shawn's not able to do it as well, I want to let people know so that y'all aren't looking for it. So please give us the follow. We'll keep you posted. Prayers appreciated for a healthy grandbaby. All right, with that, let's move to the NFC North and let's talk about the Lions, who, what an incredible game against the Ravens. Thoroughly outcoached and outplayed the Ravens. I thought Dan Campbell and the Lions did. They only played 57 snaps on defense. Marcus Davenport was put on injured reserve. I know we've talked about that a few times, how shocked we are that Marcus
Shots.
Davenport got hurt and had to go on IR. But he's cashing those checks, so more power to him, man. But Al-Qadim Muhammad had an incredible game in his absence. 4 tackles, including 2.5 sacks. But he only played 46% of the snaps. I love the interview. They gave him a game ball in the locker room after the game, and I loved his interview or talk that he gave to his team, I should say, where he talked about a year ago he was sitting on the couch and the Lions gave him a call and gave him the opportunity and how appreciative he was to the team, the coaches, the players, the other edge players in the room and how supportive they've been. And he talked about how not letting any opportunities pass you by when you have them. It was really kind of inspiring. It was only like 40 seconds long. I probably took longer to summarize it than he talked about it. But I love that kind of attitude. But still, at 46%, Shawn, how comfortable are we with Al Qadim Muhammad right now?
I can't start him on that. 46% is asking a lot.
He did
There's
have a
enough.
sack in week 2, if I remember correctly, as well, though.
I've seen him produce in the past. With the Colts, he had a pretty good year or two there with some tackles and some sacks. And it's always been in a rotational role. He's never just been the star guy, the main guy. So he can do that, but he can also give you a bunch of zeros, and I don't like those. They make me sad, Ricky. So it's risk versus reward here. If you're comfortable enough to take that shot, he can give you a couple sacks, but I think the most he's ever had in a season is around 6, 7, maybe 8. It's not a lot. So
If you're a Nick Bosa owner in a
you could
deep
do
league,
worse. Yeah. I,
I, and there's a chance that he gets a little bit more playing time. To your point, he has tended to be a rotational end, but maybe he's earning more playing time, and it's not like they have a lot of depth behind him either.
that's true.
So this could be something interesting to see. In a deep league, he's depending on my edge situation. He is actually one of the folks that I'm considering in one of my Bosa leagues where I lost Nick Bosa in terms of a replacement for Nick Bosa. Now, this is a pretty deep league. There's not tons of stuff out there,
Right.
but he is under consideration for me. I haven't done my waivers for that league yet.
He
All
is going to
righty.
be sack or bust, so just
Yep.
be aware of that.
Okay. And then the great call out. Now, moving to Aiden Hutchinson, if you weren't watching the game for the longest time, you would have thought if you're just looking at the box score because you're at work or something, you'd be thinking like, holy cow, is this guy even playing? But luckily, he got a couple of tackles late in the game, including a sack, and he did get a forced fumble on Derrick Henry, which, by the way, that fumble cost me a game, and I lost by half a point because I
I
lost
lost one as
-2
well.
on that fumble. Hate when that happens. Um, but in watching him play, it just feels like it's a matter of time before we see the Hutchinson that we've seen in the past, Shawn. So
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I don't I
He's
don't think we want people giving up on him right now.
no, and I know several have. There's been several comments I've heard where he's just not going to be the same anymore after the knee, the leg stuff, and all that. And I'm thinking, guys, it's just came back. It's going to take a little bit of time. We're still at the beginning of the season. It's week 3, so I'm not giving up on him because he can sit here and do the same thing Muhammad did.
Yeah, someone to consider buying low, in my opinion, for sure, right now, because there are several people down on him right now out there
Yeah.
in the Exosphere or Twitter sphere or whatever you want to call it. All right, Derek Barnes once again had a healthy snap count with 82% of the snaps. He played 49 of those snaps on the edge. We've been talking about folks like Jermaine Pratt. We've been talking about folks like Caden Ellis playing a lot of those snaps on the edge. At least Barnes got 7 tackles and he got a sack and did a nice job helping to contain Lamar Jackson. So deeper leagues, Barnes someone to just potentially keep an eye on. Particularly, he's playing that consistent, 80+% of the snaps. Jack Campbell and Alexander Zaloney both played 100% of the snaps. Campbell led the team with 8 tackles. Anzalone only had 4 tackles, one of which was solo. When Anzalone was in that Mike role and Jack Campbell was in that Will role, when the roles have been reversed in the past before they had enough confidence in Campbell to move him to the middle or the green dot role, we saw similar where Anzalone had great production and Campbell did not have great production. Is it time to punt on Alex Anzalone based on this?
Punts, not quite, but he is a deeper league option at this point where, if you're only playing 2 linebackers, he's not on your radar. Not right now. So, but no, punt, no. There's guys. I'm taking him over Tyrese Knight. I'm taking him over Trevor Wallace and all that because he does still have that full time role. But he's not going to give me a whole lot of production. So as long as I know that and I'm okay with that, I can sleep at night.
Yeah, you beat me to the question I was going to ask you, which was him versus Knight or
I felt
Wallace.
it coming.
You
I
felt it
felt it.
coming.
Yeah.
We're in mind meld, man. I like that. All right, good deal. All right, Brian Branch, 100% of the snaps. Kirby Joseph, 96% of snaps. Some changes in their deployment, though, Shawn, that I just want to talk about briefly. Brian Branch played 42% of the snaps deep. Kirby Joseph only played 53% of the snaps deep. Kirby Joseph had been playing 71 and 69% of the deep, much less this week, while Branch played a lot more where he had been playing a lot more close to the line of scrimmage. 1 week anomaly, or you think this is something that we got to be concerned about?
I think this was just the game plan against Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson's rushing attack here. That's all I think that was.
All right. I think I agree with you on that as well. Now, Kirby Joseph, we talked about it or going into the season, I should say, how last year's stats, his numbers were propped up by a lot of those interceptions,
Mm-hmm.
and he's certainly not getting the tackles. He only had 3 once again. So Kirby Joseph is one, if you were betting on him based on last year's numbers, he's someone I think that you can consider releasing for a better safety, Shawn.
Yep, you release him now, and he'll get an interception this weekend to make you feel terrible. You're going to pick him back up, and he's just going to get a handful of tackles for the next 4 weeks.
Exactly. Just like
Don't
the
fall for
Antoine
it.
Winfield, just like the Antoine Winfield
Exactly.
situation. That's exactly right. Moving to the Packers, who inexplicably, oh, I didn't say that very well, blah, 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 but surprisingly and shockingly, um, lost to the Browns, and they kind of gave the game away late. But they played 66 snaps on defense. Now, what was interesting in the interior defensive line, we've seen Wyatt do well, we've seen Brooks do well, we've seen Wood do well. So this past week, what happens? They all played 58% of the snaps. Wyatt was down from 74%, Brooks was down from 70%, Wood was up from 30%. So they all played 58% of the snaps. None of them really did much, including Devontae Wyatt, who gave us a nada, zilch, goose egg, zero, which was very disappointing, unfortunately, because the Browns interior uh, isn't known to be the strongest, but I guess Ethan Posick and the LSU guy and some of these others did really well. Had to get an LSU plug in there. Sorry.
I'm
Um,
shocked.
yeah, but Devontae Wyatt is still someone I'm comfortable with. I'm just a little bit disappointed in that snap count, but particularly where you get big plays for sacks, Devontae Wyatt has been doing well on pressure rates and pass rush win rate for interior defensive linemen. Still someone to keep an eye on for these defensive tackle required leagues. Moving to the edge, Micah Parsons played the most snaps he's played so far. He's played 77%, but only 2 tackles and only 2 quarterback hits. Rashawn Gary, 67% of the snaps, 3 tackles, and 2 sacks. And guess who's leading the league in sacks, Shawn Teague? I just gave
it's
you a big hint.
it's Rashawn Gary with 4.5.
That is correct, sir. So I think this Rashawn Gary thing with Micah Parsons, and shout out to TN, who going back to the week 1 start sit show, I believe it was the week 1 start sit show,
I believe
said
so.
Parsons is going to help these guys, and I wasn't as confident, but I gotta say he's been right so far, and so Rashawn Gary is someone we don't think is a fluke. I think we're continuing to ride that train, and we're not selling high, right, Shawn?
It's the Micah Parsons effect. When you got a beast on one side, they have to double, triple team him, and the other guy gets all the accolades, I guess.
He's getting the
So
stats exactly right.
yeah,
All right, so moving to the linebacker position, Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper, who was another one that you would have been worried that was he injured earlier in the game because the stats weren't there. Um, so Quay Walker finished with 14 tackles and a pass defense. Edgerrin Cooper only had 4 and 1 pass defense. Guess who's tied for 5th in the league in tackles with 31?
Quay Walker.
Quay Walker would be the correct answer as well. So he actually has more tackles than Edgerrin Cooper right now, of course, buoyed by this 14 tackle weekend. Cooper only having 4. Now, Shawn, when we have these situations where we have two linebackers on a team that both play 100% of the snaps, you know, most weeks we like to see both of them with 8 to 10, 11 tackles, but that's not always going to be the case like in this week, and we don't want to panic, correct?
Yeah, I'm not panicking over Cooper here. The whole game was just kind of weird, and clearly the Browns showed up in this one, and it was just Quay's day, I guess. And that happens. We've seen it with Jamin Sherwood, Quincy Williams. One of them will pop off, but most weeks they're usually pretty close. And we'll expect this. There's going to be a week where Cooper is twice the tackles that Walker is, and you're not going to panic there either because they're both going to get their tackles this year.
Yeah. And now Javon Bullard moving to the secondary only played 56% of the snaps. Now, he was basically um, their slot cornerback. So let's be clear on that. But he only played 56% of the snaps because if you think about the Browns, you think about David Njoku, you think about Howard Fannin, you think about Zaire Mitchell, Peyton Mitchell, something along those lines, who they've been calling up from the practice squad.
Yeah.
So lots of three tight end situations or two tight end situations. So Bullard wasn't on the field a lot. Keyshawn Nixon played one corner. Nate Hobbs and Carrington Valentine alternated at the other cornerback slot, with Hobbs now up to 77% of the snaps. But it doesn't look like Hobbs is going to move into that slot corner role, at least at this point, which is where we love Nate Hobbs. So don't chase him on reputation unless we see a change where he moves inside and Bullard goes to the bench. That has not happened yet. McKinney played 100% of the snaps. Evan Williams played 95% of the snaps. Both had 6 tackles. McKinney did get that interception, but McKinney played 62% of the snaps deep. Surprisingly, Evan Williams only played 49% deep, where in week 1 it was 77% and week 2 was 61%. So of these safeties between McKinney and Williams, what do you think in terms of the safety spectrum, safety 1, safety 2, 3, 4? Where would you slot those two in right now, Shawn?
Oh, I think with McKinney's big playability, he can get you in the bottom of a safety 2, and Williams safety 3. Just for whatever reason, he's just not giving a whole lot of production, and that's probably because of the linebackers sitting in front of him. So safeties that are playing behind weaker linebacker cores usually get those bigger tackle days. Unfortunately, they have Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper in front of them, so the tackles don't always get to them. So it's going to be the lower days for those guys.
Right. And the last thing we'll mention about the Packers is Keyshawn Nixon played 91% of the snaps at outside corner, which is can he keep up the tackles like the Paulson Adebos? Maybe, but I'm not banking on it.
No, I
Shawn,
wouldn't either.
Shawn's not.
I'm not big on Nixon being able to produce like he has in the past. Plus, I believe his return yardage, return usage is being cut down quite a bit as well.
Yeah, he's only on punt returns, not kick returns at this point in time. And of course, if he was still doing kick returns with 80% of the kickoff returns now being returned, that could be really productive for him in return yardage leagues. But that's just not the case right now for him. All right, the Vikings played the Bengals in another blowout game, but once again, they only played 56 snaps because they were scoring a touchdown, whether it be offense or defense, constantly. But let's talk a little bit. We'll start on the interior or the defensive line first. On the interior, Javon Hargrave left the game with an injury, only played 22% of the snaps. Looks like he's going to be questionable for this coming week. Probably need an alternative, folks, as if he's someone that you've been using at defensive tackle. At the edge spot, Andrew will come back from a concussion. With the game becoming a blowout so quickly, I didn't hear any other reason why he might have come out of the game, so I'm speculating. He only played 16% of the snaps, which was 8 snaps. On 8 snaps, he had 2 sacks. So if he would have played a typical 64 snap game, that means he would have had 16 sacks for the game, which would put him on pace for over, probably around 200 for the year, something like that. Obviously, the point of that sarcasm is that is not repeatable. You got darn lucky if you did play him that he got those 2 sacks in those 8 snaps. We are going to be watching the injury reports, and we'll probably talk about it on the Start Sit show on Sunday morning. Another reason for you to join us. But it was a little bit of a surprise that he did that. But once again, I think it was just because he was coming back from the concussion. Unless you heard something different, Shawn.
No, I haven't seen any other injury concerns there. Just I think this game got out of hand so quick that they just went ahead and gave him the rest, and Dallas Turner got in the mix to give the young guy some reps there. That's the best story I have so far. But as far as any, you know, re-injury risk with his head or anything, I've seen nothing.
Yeah, I haven't either as well. Okay, so now moving to the edge position, Jonathan Grenard played 88% of the snaps. Dallas Turner played 68%. And then the rookie from Georgia, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, played 56% of the snaps. Now, Dallas Turner, been keeping an eye on his utilization, where his snap count has increased. In week 2, he played 73% of the snaps on the D line, but 27% of the box slot kind of role. So he was doing a little bit of what AVG had been doing. This week, he played 94% of the snaps on the defensive line. So mostly on the defensive line, very little from a box perspective. Okay. So that's how that worked out for Dallas Turner. But with AVG coming back, by the way, that's Andrew Van Ginkel, just to make sure, because someone said, hey, can you make sure sometimes and clarify some of these things? So I want to make sure everybody's clear. Andrew Van Ginkel,
The
AVG.
average of who? Yeah.
Exactly. Uh, when AVG comes back, we now have Harrison Smith back. And before I ask you that question, let's talk a little bit more about the linebackers secondary. Then I'll come back and ask you a couple of different questions. Going to the linebackers, Eric Wilson played 82% of the snaps. Once again, it was because of blowout, so he came out early. He had 7 tackles and a forced fumble. Ivan Pace played 86% of the snaps. He had a team high 12 tackles and 3 quarterback hits. In the secondary, Harrison Smith was back, but he was back from this illness. But with the blowout, it made it easy for them to just ease him back in. He only played 44% of the snaps. Of that 44%, he played 73% of his 44% deep, meaning he only played 27% close to the line. Josh Metellus returned back to his great box usage that we love. He only played 30% deep, 70% close to the line of scrimmage, which was fantastic. He had 5 tackles and an interception. Of course, Isaiah Rodgers had this monster game with 2 TDs, an interception, 2 pass defenses, a forced fumble, fumble recovery, 3 tackles. And I also heard he delivered some of Santa's Christmas gifts early. It was that kind of game that he had. Now, in week 1, he only had 5 tackles and 1 tackle for loss. In week 2, he only had 4 tackles and a tackle for loss. We'll come back. Hold that thought. And then Byron Murphy ended up playing a little bit more slot this week. Not much more, but a little bit more. Sure would like to see him more in the slot. So there's a lot to talk about with the Vikings here. Let's go to Dallas Turner first. With all that being said, is Dallas Turner going to return to that 30 to 35% role with Andrew Van Ginkel healthy and with Grenard healthy?
I think so. Yeah, that seems to be the pecking order. Van Ginkel has that big contract, so I feel like he's going to get that start for sure. But anytime they can get him some rest and probably get Turner some reps, they're probably going to work him in a little bit more. Let's see, 60-40, something like that.
So
That's my
you think a
guess.
little bit up to 40% and maybe a little bit more of a rotation with Grenard and Van Ginkel, you think, to get him up to that
I
40%
I
range?
think so. Of course, this is going to come down to game scripts and whatnot. Now, if it's going to be in a close game, the entire game, then probably not as much, barring some kind of weird injury. And it doesn't have to be an injury to these guys. We've seen what Harrison Smith did to this entire formation here. It's really incredible how all these pieces interact with each other here.
Exactly, which leads to my next question, which is Ivan Pace playing 86% of the snaps. When the Vikings have their regular rotations in and it's not blowout games and things along those lines, that second linebacker role, and Pace usually doesn't play 86% of the snaps. Do you think that's also going to return to normal, and maybe we see Pace in the 40-60% range, or do you think they'll be playing with more two linebacker sets with including Pace?
So I think with this one here, we had the Van Giegel situation where he didn't play as much, which he doesn't just play on the edge; he plays that linebacker role as well. So with him being pretty much out for the game on that, and then the blowout, so Pace would be the number two guy. Uh, they just found a way to get him quite a few more reps here. So I do see him dropping back down to 60, high 60s probably to be the norm again going forward. Again, it's these all these pieces really intertwine with each other here. So barring some kind of injuries, uh, yeah, I think Pace goes back down. Van Giegel will go up. I do think Turner has done enough to. They're going to try to work him in a little more. Metellus is in a better spot, and then Harrison Smith is on the field more. Ideally,
Exactly right. So I'm with you. So far, you are so smart I agree with you in a
I
way. So that makes me
don't
smart
know
as
about
well.
that. It's
And
only
so,
week three, Ricky.
and now Harrison Smith played 73% deep, as I mentioned. Theo Jackson played 84%. So I think we're going to see mostly Harrison Smith and Theo Jackson playing those deep roles. Theo playing the Cam Bynum role from last year. We
Yeah,
see Medalist playing more closer to the line, sort of that third linebacker type of role and slash safety role. We see Van Ginkel playing some edge and see him moving into some box snaps as well, like in week one, just for perspective for everyone. The only game that Van Ginkel's played the full game so far this year, he played 20% of his snaps in the box or the slot in week one for perspective. So that's why Shawn and I are in alignment that pace will come down with Harrison Smith being back, Medalist returning his old role. As Van Ginkel comes back, him playing that hybrid kind of role. And Turner still gets about, 35, 40% of the snaps, but not enough that you want to take that chance and start him unless, Van Ginkel or Grenard happen to be out, and then you could play Turner. There's a lot to unpack with the Vikings, but I wanted to go that thoroughly for our audience because they probably have a lot of questions on that as well. Anything else you'd add on the Vikings, Shawn, or you think we hit it, man?
I think that's got it pretty well covered. As far as Isaiah Rogers getting 2 touchdowns every other week, that's probably not
Oh,
going to happen.
yes, I forgot. That was going to be the last question I asked, and I absolutely forgot. And there was a reason I brought up his 5 tackles and his 4 tackles in week one and week two, and he only had 2 tackles in week three. He did have these big plays, but folks, when you're thinking about a fab bid on him, think about 5 tackles and 4 tackles and 2 tackles, not
Yeah,
the 2 touchdowns and the interceptions and the fumbles and recoveries and so forth.
yeah,
Shawn?
he would have won you this week, but the other 2 weeks you didn't do enough to really help you out. So yeah, definitely be careful on stuff like that.
All right, the Bears played the Cowboys, and the Bears played 74 snaps. Of course, it was a blowout game, particularly late. Montez Sweat played 58% of the snaps, which is down for him, and Deo Odingbo 61%. Deo at least had 4 tackles. Sweat did have only 2 tackles again, but he did get a sack finally, so good for Montez Sweat. I know you're not a Montez Sweat fan, Shawn.
2 boomer bust for me. He actually had a sack last week. I believe it was called back on penalty, but he doesn't really give you more than just a couple tackles. I want somebody who's giving me at least a higher floor with the potential of sacks, not sack or nothing. Again, I don't like the 1 point, 2 point, 0 point games. That's not going to win.
Now, at the linebacker position, TJ Edwards was out. And as we told you the first time he was out, and we remind you all again that Noah Sewell was the man to pick up. He played 99% of the snaps and had 11 tackles. And it was also reported, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to confirm it, but it was reported that he wore the green dot instead of Tremaine Edmonds. Edmonds had been wearing the green dot the first couple of weeks as well. So it's something I want to check. Y'all probably can Google it and find out for yourselves as well. But that was quite the surprise. Now, Tremaine Edmonds played 96% of the snaps, and holy cow, what a game he had. 15 tackles, which I didn't go research it, but I'm betting is probably close to a career high, if not a career high for him. So maybe an outlier game. And 2 interceptions. Now, one of them I could have intercepted as well, even at my grandfatherly age. Uh, but, you know, credit to him 15 tackles, 2 interceptions. TJ Edwards did not practice at all last week. If that was the case, and then the amount of time he missed going into week one as well from a preseason hamstring injury, I'm expecting Noah Sewell to probably be playing again this week. We'll watch the injury reports. And if he does play, Shawn, I could see Sewell as high as a linebacker too when you're considering your lineup setting.
Yeah, absolutely. If he's given this type of production, we've seen what he did in the previous week one there. Um, yeah, I'm comfortable starting Sewell over quite a few guys actually.
Sewell or Caden Ellis for one
Uh,
week, not for dynasty, for one week.
Now that one's really tempting. I'm going to hang in there with Ellis, but it's a lot
It's
closer than I'd like it to be.
it's a darn closer than it was before
Yeah,
the year started. That is for sure. I'm right there with you.
it's the sack upside. I think that breaks that tie.
Sewell or Levante David.
I'm probably taking Sewell over David because I
All
know
right.
he's not going to give me the sacks and the double digit tackles every week.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So we are aligned. Okay. Now, moving on to the secondary real quick. Jalen Johnson was put on IR. Nashawn Wright, who we told y'all not to chase after he had that pick six, and hopefully y'all listened to us, but he did play 100% of the snaps. Nick McLeod continued to play the slot while Kyler Gordon's out. It looked like you wanted to say something about Nashawn Wright or Jalen
Um,
Johnson.
yeah, Deshaun Wright. I did chase that. In one league, I had Jarvis Brownlee was like a last second inactive, and he was sitting on the waiver wire. So I picked him up because they were playing the Cowboys. Now the Cowboys are giving up the most points to cornerbacks. So this was like a 1 week stream. I'm dumping him this week, and I'm going after somebody else. So just be aware of some of the matchups like that where teams are really giving up a lot of points to cornerbacks. You can do something like that. I'm not holding on to him. I'm looking to see who the Cowboys are playing again next week.
Right. Now, the one thing to be careful with the Cowboys with no CD Lamb,
That's true.
will they hold up as the top target? Because they sure threw a lot to Jake Ferguson this past week. So that's one thing to consider as things continue to evolve. Okay, and then wrapping up the Bears in the secondary, Brisker and Byard both played 100% of the snaps. Brisker only had 3 tackles. Byard had 7 tackles and interception. But what was interesting about Brisker, he played the most amount of deep snaps year to date so far. He played 66% deep. Byard played 76% deep as well, which is the most he's played deep as well this year. So was this because it was the Cowboys passing game, Shawn? Because
That's my guess.
Brisker playing that deep and only having 3 tackles is a little bit worrisome.
Yeah, because most of the time he's playing up in the box, in up near the line of scrimmage and all. But the Cowboys struggling with the running game, playing from behind. They had to throw a lot this game, which a lot of it went to, like you say, Ferguson and then Pickens with Lamb out. So I think this is a 1 week alignment here. I expect this to get back to normal next week.
Yeah. Now, we're going to move to the NFC East next, and we're going to talk about the Cowboys, who we just talked about, were the Bears, who they played. Cowboys only played 59 snaps on defense. Of course, this one, as we mentioned, became a little bit of a blowout game late. Now, the Cowboys used a 5-person rotation on the edge, and that's excluding Jadeveon Clowney, who was not active for the game. Only one of those players had over 50% of the snaps, and that was Sam Williams at 54%. There's a technical term for this rotation, and let me see if I can describe it for everybody. It's called butt ugly, I believe is the right technical term to use for that. We are not going to use any of these Cowboy edge players with this kind of rotation utilization, particularly without Jadeveon Clowney even being introduced in the mix. Not to mention, there hasn't exactly been a ton of productivity since week one out of any of these guys. Shawn?
Yeah, absolute mess. We talked before about how it could be anybody's week to get a sack. We're never going to know whose week it's going to be. Even with Clowney joining this, Clowney's never been a overly consistent guy either. I'm avoiding him too until somebody can separate themselves from the others and really give us solid production consistently. I'm avoiding this all the way around.
Now, I think Sam Williams has the capability potentially to give us a little bit of a tackle floor and an occasional sack, but not at 51 or 54% of the snaps in this heavy rotation. So, all right, moving on to the linebackers. Kenneth Murray played 100% of the snaps, had a whopping 6 tackles. There's your Kenneth Murray for you.
Yep.
Jack Sanborn played 81% of the snaps, and he had 7 tackles. Now Clark and Lufau brought up the rear in terms of percent snaps played. Sorry, Malik Hooker 95%, Donovan Wilson 90%, Wanye Thomas 15% of the snaps. He picked up the other 9 snaps that the other 2 Hooker and Wilson did not play. Shawn and I were both high, and when we did our top 24 repeaters and non-repeaters, there was a lot of rumblings about Donovan Wilson and concerns about his age and productivity, and would Wanye Thomas leapfrog him? And we actually both predicted Wanye Thomas to jump into the top 24. I believe that was back in the June timeframe, maybe early July timeframe when we did that show. So that was even before training camp started. Particularly when Wanye Thomas in his snaps played 89% of the box and only 11% deep. If something along that line continued and he got the playing time, it'd be great. But right now, unfortunately, there's just no line of sight to that. Malik Hooker played 77% deep, folks, which isn't good for productivity. As we talked about, he did have one good game of tackles, but at 77% deep, that's going to be hard to replicate. Donovan Wilson, 40% deep, 60% close to the line of scrimmage, that means, which has been roughly consistent with the first couple of weeks as well. But he's in that 6 tackle range roughly. He's just not giving us that uber high upside. He's giving us a little bit of a floor, but not giving us that high upside. Donovan Wilson is more of a safety 3, Shawn, low end safety 3, or you got him a little bit different than that?
Yeah, mid-low 3, because he can get some of those higher tackle numbers, an occasional sack or something like that. But yeah, still a 3.
Yep. Now moving to the Eagles, who played 66 snaps against the Rams on defense. Talking about the interior defensive line first, Moro Ojimo, who was talked about as a breakout. People were really excited. The Eagles players on defense were talking him up. His snap count has gone from 90% to 70% to now 50% in week 3. And with that, there hasn't been a whole lot of productivity as he had only 2 tackles this week. Now, Big Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter both had interesting games. Jordan Davis played 68% of the snaps, Jalen Carter 91%. Now, we'd like to see more productivity out of Jalen Carter with 91% of the snaps, but he did have 2 quarterback hits to go along with his 3 tackles. Jordan Davis, 5 tackles and a sack, which was fantastic. Both of those gentlemen blocked a kick as well. And of course, Davis ran down the field, and he would outrun this grandfather, by the way, based on what I saw, even at his 330-pound weight. He and got the touchdown off that block field goal to wrap up the game here. I'm liking Jordan Davis more and more, and watching how much weight and how he's playing. He's someone that's probably bouncing on the low end number 1, high end 2, or do you see it even higher than that, Shawn, for Jordan Davis?
If he can do stuff like this every week, definitely start moving him up into the high 2s. Consistency's always been the problem here, because he'll have a game or 2 like this, and then he gets kind of flipped back to the 3rd defensive tackle and loses some production for a few weeks. So he's still a bit of a risk, but if he can really put it together and give us stuff like this all the time, I'm not expecting block kicks every week and touchdowns, but 330 pounds to go, I believe it was 18 miles per hour. I mean, that's scary.
Exactly. That's faster than a run.
Yeah, that's we didn't get the full camera shot on the other end of that to see what that looks like. I mean, we see what it looked like running away, but not coming towards. I imagine it's quite the sight.
Exactly. But now, throughout training camp, how many players we hear about they're quote in the best shape of their life? But that appears to be very true for Jordan Davis. If you look at,
Yeah,
go Google a picture of him or find something from last year versus this year and look how he looked. And he's always listed around 330, but last year I'd be willing to bet he was playing much closer to 350, 360 is my guess. And he might even be a little bit lower than 330 right now. So I'm willing to take a chance on him, and he'll be someone I'll be looking at waiver wires in some of my defensive tackle required leagues. On the edge, Nolan Smith's playing time continues to come down from 85% week one, 73% week two, down to 70% this past week. Jalix Hunt was slightly up back to 65%. Zadarius Smith was at 36%. We told you not to chase it after that great week one he had. He didn't have any stats this past week, and he played 33% roughly the week before. So don't chase Zadarius Smith as we talked about. And man, I'm easily dumping Smith and Hunt in leagues if I have them. There's the productivity is not there right now. There's
I
other fish in the sea.
already have. This was a 16 team start to defensive tackle league, or start. I think you start up to 3 defensive ends. I'm sorry, edge rushers, and I dropped Jalen Hunt. It's giving me nothing. I can't remember who I picked up, but they were doing more than Jalen Hunt.
Yep.
So very disappointing. I really was expecting a breakout year for him, especially with how well he looked in the playoffs. That has not manifested so far this season.
Yeah. Now it's someone I still want to keep my eye on Jalix Hunt because he did come from the small school background. He was a defensive back, moved to defensive line, so he's still learning. He's still uber athletic. He's got Fangio as his coordinator, so there's a lot of things going for him. But right now he's on watch mode and not on pickup mode. Um, okay, Zach Bowen at linebacker, 100%. Jihad Campbell, 95%. Campbell had 8 tackles. Bowen had 7 tackles and interception. The thing about Campbell is he played 30% of his snaps on the D line, up from 12% in week two. That is a little bit concerning from a productivity perspective. We've talked about several of these off-ball linebackers that are getting a lot of snaps on the edge. Some of them are doing well with these 7 or 8 tackles, but it's hard to sustain that with that kind of percentage on the edge, Shawn.
Yeah, especially when that percentage is going up. Like you said, if he continues to spend even more time there, then it's going to be like Fourier last year, where tackles just weren't there for him.
And the Eagles are still working to generate pass rush, and that's part of the reason they're doing it because they're not getting in from Smith or Hunt. And okay, so Darius Smith had a great week one, but he isn't. Let's just say he's an older player. Um, I
Yeah,
think it's 33 if I remember correctly. Maybe it's 32, but he's up there in age, so he's only going to play in the mid 30s probably, and maybe we'll get you a sack every now and then. All right, moving to the secondary. Cooper DeJean played 100% of the snaps. Fantastic. He only played 19% out wide. The rest was close to the line of scrimmage. He led the team with 9 tackles, and we told you on a previous show that with this 100% of the snaps, that the stats would come with it. And there you go, leading the team with 9 tackles. Reed Blankenship, 100% of the snaps. Andrew Makuba, 74% alternated with Sidney Brown, who played 30% of the snaps. But let's talk about their deep alignment. Reed Blankenship, 83% of his snaps were deep. Makuba, 63% deep. Sidney Brown, 80% deep. This Vic Fangio two deep system results in the Eagles defense usually playing fairly well, but it's not a recipe for success for our safeties. Reed Blankenship, for example, only 4 tackles, Makuba 3 tackles. We're staying away from those guys right now, Shawn. Either playing time for Makuba because he's not 100%, and Blankenship because he is at 100%, but only 4 tackles as we talked about.
yeah, the production is not there. You got 2 solid linebackers in front of him and a nickel running all over the place making tackles. So there's just not a lot left over for these guys playing that much deep. 60, 70, 80% deep. That's a lot. It's only in deep leagues where you're starting 3, 4 safeties can you play any of these guys really.
Yeah. Now, moving on to the Commanders, who played the Raiders and played 66 snaps. Wow, a lot of teams played 66 snaps. It's just hit me as we're going through this here. Once again, a sort of a blowout game, I'll call it. There was a Deron Payne sighting, which was nice to see. He had 6 tackles and a quarterback hit. He's one of these interior defensive tackles who will have some ups and downs kind of thing. So we see him more as a number 2 DT, not a number 1 for sure. Johnny Newton, I just want to call him out. Johnny Newton, Jerzon Newton, whichever way you want to go. He's the number 3 defensive tackle in the rotation right now. Actually, 3/4 with him and Eddie Goldman. Number 1, number 2 are a combination of Deron Payne and Javon Kinlaw. A lot of people may be stashing him on dynasty squads. Shawn, is it time to let him go at this point in time, or are you going to maybe hold him a little bit longer?
I'm not holding on to him. I feel like there's enough startable defensive tackles out there, even in dynasty, because most leagues are starting 1, 2 tops, unless you're in a crazy league where it's defensive tackle only, which I'm in, and nobody has him on his team, on their team. So yeah, let him go. It's not worth holding on to. If you need that roster spot, defensive tackles, cornerbacks, those are the first ones that should go.
Right. Dorrance Armstrong, who a couple of years ago we thought was going to have a breakout as an edge player and then kind of fell off from there. He's off to a really good start this year. And once again, here in this third game, he had 5 tackles and another sack, giving him 3 for the year. Where do you see Shawn? Where do you see him? Do you see him as now a number 2 edge player right now?
Low
Not
end
quite
two,
that high.
still low end two. I want to see it some more because we have seen it a couple years ago with Cowboys look good, and then he just fell flat. Got stuck in rotation and didn't quite do anything. Even last year, nothing overly spectacular, but great start. If he can keep it up, then yeah, I'll jump on the bandwagon. But for now, I'm optimistic.
Okay. All right, Bobby Wagner played 100% of the snaps at linebacker. Frankie Louvu played 91%. Now, Frankie Louvu talking about usually a boom or bust player. Louvu actually had 7 tackles this year. No sacks to go along with it, but 7 tackles. Bobby Wagner led the team with 11 tackles and 2 sacks and 3 quarterback hits. Amazing for his age how he continues to produce. Guess who's tied for third in the league in tackles with 32?
Bobby Wagner.
Boy, I love throwing you these softballs. That would be correct, Bobby Wagner. So
I didn't
obviously,
even study for this test, folks.
yeah, that is correct. So Luvu's not giving us the sacks, and he had been giving us the high-end tackles. So seven was great, but boy, for those counting on Luvu this year, it's been disappointing so far, Shawn.
Yeah, we tried to steer everybody off of him this year in the offseason. We talked about how that's tough to sustain, counting on just the sacks because his tackle floor was so low. It's hard to start. You could almost would you start Tyrese Knight over Frankie Louvu?
I think I would play Luvu overnight.
How close is it?
Well, the fact that I didn't just blurt out Luvu tells me it's pretty close in my mind.
Yeah, it's worth considering, right? Just because they're at least giving you consistent tackles each week, even though it's on lower percent. Where Luvu's giving you even lower tackles, and you got to get that sack in there every now and then to make up for it. So I'm not a Luvu fan.
Right. Now, Luvu, just for additional data for our listening and watching audience here, played 34% of his snaps in both weeks 1 and 2 on the D line. Week 3, he was down a little bit to 28%. Now, something we'll continue to monitor. Does that change as maybe Von Miller picks things up and with Armstrong playing better? So it'll be something to keep an eye on if that percent on the D line continues to decrease or if it stays in that roughly 30% range. Moving to the secondary now. This is a question for a test that won't have as easy an answer for you, Shawn. So let's talk about the secondary. Will Harris played 35% of the snaps, and then he snapped his fibula. See what I did there? And he is going on IR. Percy Butler played 1 snap. He hurt his hip, and his status is TBD. regardless of that, Jeremy Reeves, who has been known throughout his career for his special teams prowess, ended up playing 70% of the snaps, the ones that he basically moved into the Will Harris role. And he ended up playing um, only 26% deep, and the rest of it was close to the line of scrimmage. So, for perspective. Now, will Reeves continue in the Will Harris role? This is the tough question. That's not an easy answer for. So, will it be Reeves? Will it be Percy Butler, who's been around for several years? Will it be the athletic but undrafted free agent Tyler Owens, who they're very high on? Or will it be Darnell Savage, who the Jaguars just released last week and the Commanders just signed? And there's rumors that they have a plan to use him.
For this week, my money is on Jeremy Reeves. I was shocked to find out he's been in the league for 8 seasons now. I do remember
Mostly
it.
due to special teams.
I do remember a time when he was the starter, I believe, back in the Cam Curl days, and due to injury, he played some then, and I want to say he did decent from a tackle perspective, IDP perspective,
But he is in that 30-year-old range.
yeah, so that was a bit of a surprise there. I think
So you're
this
going Tanner Reeves for week 4.
for week 4. After that, it's going to be an absolute mess.
I'm thinking that, as much as I hate to say it,
Savage.
Darnell Savage is another type of Will Harris. He's a guy.
Yep,
He can
four
play the
tackles a
role.
game.
How many you said?
4 tackles a game.
I was going to say 4 to 5. So we're aligned there, which is what Will Harris was kind of giving us.
Yep.
And so, unfortunately, this isn't going to be a Jeremy Chin situation with a high upside in certain games and that four or 5 tackles. Unfortunately, if you had Will Harris and we're counting on him, this is just not a great situation. And we're certainly not going to, I don't think even though we think Reeves will play this week, I don't think we're recommending people putting him in the lineup. At least I'm not,
No,
Shawn.
no, absolutely not. That was just the answer to the question of who I think it will be this week. It's not worth picking up and starting him this week. The risk is quite large actually, because they could throw Darnell Savage right in, or Owens could get some more rotation work there too. It's probably going to be an absolute mess. Uh, Avoid it. Just avoid the entire situation. Even Quan Martin hasn't really done much this year. This entire secondary has been very lackluster. Sainer still's been decent, but
And I'm glad you brought up Quan Martin, because I didn't even mention his name, because I would have thought that if they were going to use him in that role, they would have put him in that role and maybe put Reeves deep or something along those lines, and they
yeah,
didn't do that. But there is a chance that maybe, because Butler has played a little bit deep safety as well. If Butler's healthy, maybe Quan Martin moves into that role as the year progresses, and maybe Butler plays that deep role that Quan Martin's been playing. Something to keep an eye on, and we'll certainly be helping you all to do so. Okay, moving to the Giants here as we wrap up the NFC East. They played 72 snaps against the Chiefs. The Giants defense has played 89 snaps in one game, 70 snaps in another game, and 72 snaps in the other one. That is on the higher side, folks, which should give them pretty darn good productivity. Now, Brian Burns played 85% of the snaps. Kayvon Thibodeau played 90% of the snaps. Both season highs for both of them. Abdul Carter played 75% of the snaps. But Abdul Carter played
40 some.
yeah, unfortunately, my numbers, I messed up in how I typed this up, so my apologies in my notes here. But he played a significant amount of snaps in that off-ball linebacker position. We actually even talked about in the previous shows that is something that could happen with McFadden hurt and on IR, Board hurt on IR. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles was out. They had signed Swayze Bowman, but we said with Abdul Carter having played some off-ball linebacker at Penn State before he moved to the edge that could happen, and he certainly played a significant amount of snaps there. But unfortunately, they were blitzing him a lot and moving him up to the line of scrimmage quite a bit, which hurt his productivity. So he only had 4 tackles and a quarterback hit in that box kind of role. Brian Burns had 6 tackles, 2 quarterback hits, a sack, and a pass defense. Very productive. He was all over the field. if you're watching the game, you saw him go down awkwardly at one point. It's like, oh gosh, particularly
Yeah.
after what happened with Nick Bosa earlier. It's like, oh, but luckily he was okay. He returned after a few snaps back into the game. Thibodeau, for all that playing time, only had 2 tackles and 2 quarterback hits. He continues to play a lot, but just doesn't give us the productivity that we love to see out of Thibodeau. Shawn, Abdul Carter, seeing how he was used this past week, and assuming we'll see similar usage this coming week, because there's nobody else that they would put. Oh, let me rephrase that. There's a chance. I forgot to mention Darius Muasau. He could be coming back this week with that eye concussion situation that he had. So maybe Muasau comes back in that role, could hurt Carter. But if Muasau's not, would you play Carter as someone who's edge designation but playing that off-ball linebacker spot?
If they didn't blitz him so much and still have him rushing the pass rusher as much, I would. But the production wasn't there for a regular off-ball linebacker. So, if he was chasing, running backs and dropping into coverage a bit and giving me 7, 8 tackles, then yeah, that's a cheat code. But we really didn't get that. We got normal edge rusher numbers. So, um, if he's starting in that role, you'd probably still put him in just because he can still get a sack or something there, maybe a handful of tackles. But if you got better options, I'm looking for something else.
Yeah. So Dexter Lawrence, wrapping up the defensive line for the Giants, down a little bit to 65% of the snaps. And during the broadcast, they reported that he had an elbow concern, but then he went back into the game shortly thereafter. We're going to watch the injury reports this year, but Sexy Dexy isn't exactly lighting up the IDP scorecard for us, Shawn.
Yeah, another disappointment here so far this season. It's still time to turn it up and get back on the right track here. But after that hot start last year where he had like 9 sacks in the first 10, 11 games or whatever before he got hurt, I mean, we were expecting more of that this year, especially with 3 viable edge rushers, on the ends to eat up some of the blockers. Nothing's happened yet, but I'm still hoping. But I'm not far from cutting him in one league.
Yep. And at least I'm putting him on my bench for sure right now.
He is
And
on the bench. Yep.
the thing I worry about many of the Giants as well as like some of the Saints and so forth, as this year trudges on and you're, 0-8, 1-9, 2-10, whatever it might be, even for some of these talented veterans who are getting paid a lot of money, it is hard to keep that motivation going. So just something to keep in the back of everyone's mind. If you got some of these players on some of these really struggling teams, like Jeff Simmons in Tennessee, for example,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, that's another good point. And then
it's one thing if you're trying to, you're fighting to get into the playoffs. It's
right,
another thing if you're waiting to get to the off season and go fishing down in, Mexico somewhere.
and the coach just said we're putting in the rookie quarterback, so that's like saying, hey, we're kind of giving up, so we're just going to see what we got for the next head coach.
Well put. Now, another question for you. I think this will be a softball. Guess who is leading the league in tackles right now with 34 tackles? And we're talking about the Giants.
Yeah,
So,
that's got to be Paulson Adebo.
no, that is
No,
incorrect.
oh, Bobby Okereke.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my
So
bad.
So Paulson Adebo is actually wow. You missed that softball. I'll give you I'll give you an out in that Paulson Adebo is tied for the league in tackles from people in the secondary among cornerbacks and safeties. So I'll give you that one. But Okereke is leading the league right now with 34 tackles. This is someone who both Shawn and I thought, and all indications of the coaching staff were that
Yeah,
Okereke was on the outs. But he's given that productivity, folks, and there's because of all the injuries, there's not really anything else. So I think at this point we can ride the Okereke train right now. Very different than what we expected this year.
yeah. There's nobody else right now. They're putting edge rushers in as off-ball linebackers. That's where we're at. Um, Adebo is only 7 tackles behind, so I
Yep.
did look that up real quick.
Yes, and Okereke led the team in tackles with 8 tackles this past weekend. Adebo was second with 7 tackles. Now, Holland played 100% of the snaps. Tyler Nubin played 97% of the snaps. Both had 5 tackles. Nubin played 66% of the snaps deep. That is his highest percentage so far. Holland only played 40% deep, which is his lowest percentage deep so far. You and I have been talking about Holland these past couple of weeks here, including the start sit shows and so forth. We've been talking about Nubin and Holland both.
Yeah.
Nubin's going to the bench right now.
Is on the bench, currently on the bench.
We
Not
playing
dropping him.
Holland.
Am I playing Holland? I am not. Um, I'm still not getting a lot of production. The production is still pretty even for these guys, all things considered, which isn't good. So I'm not playing Holland, and I'm not starting Nubin. I'm not cutting Nubin yet, mostly because there's nothing better on the waiver wires. However, if something does become available, I'm not I'm not beyond cutting him.
And we're not dropping him for a Lathan Ransom, who we talked about
Right,
earlier,
right.
things
I'm
along
not
those lines. I want to be clear for our audience as an example. We're
right.
not trying to stash something. We're not dropping him from Malachi Moore, who we'll talk about in a little bit here. So, but just so we're holding, but we're watching, but we're losing a lot of faith very quickly.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll mention, Drew Phillips here plays 75% of the snaps, the life of a slot cornerback. Very productive. He is their slot cornerback and plays the majority of his snaps in the slot or in the box. All right, we're going to move to the AFC East and talk about the Buffalo Bills, who only played 61 snaps against the Miami Dolphins here. One of the more interesting stats in studying things for our audience, Shawn, is that Joey Bosa climbed up from 55% of the snaps to 87% against the Dolphins. Now, we're not talking like this, they were playing the Ravens. We're not talking like they're playing the Lions. This was against the Dolphins, and his snap count jumped up that high. If he's going to play that kind of snaps and he's going to play healthy, I think it's somebody we want on our teams.
He's not
You're
going to stay
shaking your head. No,
healthy.
you're
He's not
disagreeing
going to
with me.
stay healthy at 87% of the snaps. There's no way he stays healthy.
So you think he's going to join his brother on the sidelines and they're going to get a discount on volume surgeries?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know exactly when, but it's coming. Bosa's never finished an entire season that I can recall healthy.
I think he's finished one season. I think.
One
Uh, yeah, but
is like a
he's
lot.
he's a little bit healthier than Marcus Davenport too. Let's give,
I
give him a little
I
bit credit.
never recommend anybody drafting either one. I've never had either on my team, and I never will.
Here's what I
I
would
he got
say:
a he got a couple
If
two.
Joey Bosa's on my waiver wires, and depending on what I have, if I can get him for a limited amount of fab, very little, I'm willing to take that risk until he gets hurt, and then I'll pick up somebody else at that point. But once again, it depends on who I have on my roster, who I have on my bench versus starting, etc.
Yeah.
But Shawn staying away, I'm willing to do that, folks.
If you just lost the other Bosa, then yeah, take that shot on Joey. But if you have Dorrance Armstrong on your team, I'm not dropping Dorrance Armstrong for Joey Bosa.
I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you on that one. Al Qadim Muhammad versus Joey Bosa.
Well, that's ugly. I don't want either one of them.
Is that another one of those technical but ugly terms there?
Yeah, I'd probably take Muhammad just because I think he's less likely to get injured. That's what I think.
Okay, fair enough.
Even though he's
Greg,
playing less time.
so moving on to the rest of the defensive line, Greg Russo down at 66% of the snaps. Very disappointing. One of the things that really helped Russo last year when he was playing that, high 70, nearly 80% snaps on a weekly basis, that was turning into productivity for us. At 66%, which was like what we were seeing like a couple years ago, that's just not good for Greg Russo productivity. I actually saw him get dropped in our Kings Classic League this week before we even got into waivers. Someone has given up on him.
Wow,
I
that's
don't
pretty
know if
telling right there.
what's that?
That's really telling right there. That's there's a lot of great minds in that league.
Yeah. And so I have to admit, it's someone I'm going to consider potentially putting a waiver claim on, but it's not someone I'm willing to overspend on based on these snap counts that he's been having, because it's the snap counts that has led to the productivity for him, at least last year.
Sure. He's somebody I've never been high on because he's only ever gotten like 8 sacks in a season. Like he's never reached that next level, I guess. Um, I know a lot of people like him, and there's a lot of it's this year for him, and it's never his year. So I'll let somebody else chase that.
All right. Now, talking about Ed Oliver here, he was out once again. Daquan Jones and TJ Sanders are the two that picked up the majority of the snaps, even though Deion Walker looked like the rookie from Kentucky, um,
I think he
looked like
started.
started in
Yeah,
his place, but it was Jones and Sanders who got more snaps than Walker, just as an FYI, but we're not chasing any of those folks. Terrell Bernard, 100% of the snaps, second on the team with 7 tackles, got an interception. Matt Milano was out. With Milano being out, Dorian Williams moved into the Milano role and played about 75% of the snaps, which is a little bit less than Milano typically plays. Shaq Thompson moved into the Dorian Williams role and played about 34% of the snaps. Dorian Williams had a high tackle efficiency last year when he played a lot of those snaps, not as much this year. At 75% of the snaps, not great. Okay, if Milano's still out, Dorian Wilson, Tyrese Knight, Trevin Wallace, which one you starting?
I would take Williams over those guys,
Me
and
too.
this is partially because the Dolphins haven't been the greatest matchup for linebackers so far this season, based on just not enough snaps or blowouts and whatnot. So a normal week for him, I would expect closer to 8, 9, 10 tackles.
All righty. Moving to the secondary, Teron Johnson was back and played only 66% of the snaps. He led the team with 8 tackles and 1 tackle for loss. So when he's on the field, Teron Johnson generates the stats. Now, we'd like to see more than 66%, but I think Teron Johnson, I think we can still feel comfortable as a number one cornerback right now, Shawn.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Cole Bishop, 5 tackles, 1 pass defense. Taylor Rapp, only 3 tackles, both played 100%. DeMar Hamlin didn't play any snaps on defense. Cole Bishop played 54% deep. Taylor Rapp was 62% deep. I am so disappointed in Cole Bishop's production. Tyler Newman or Cole Bishop?
Oh boy, I've cut Cole Bishop, so I'll say Newman.
Yeah, I've cut Cole Bishop as well, unfortunately. So I'm with you there. I'd still lean towards Newman over Bishop right now. Moving on to the Patriots now, who play the Steelers, and the Patriots only played 54 snaps. Patriots did a remarkable job on offense on continuing to lose the ball inside the 1 yard line somehow to the Steelers. Um, Milton Williams and Christian Barmore continue to hover in that 70% range, which is great for playing time and productivity for both of those guys. Harold Landry came down from the 91% last week down to 78%, which is probably a little bit more practical and realistic for him. Caleb Chase on 76%. Both Keon White and Anthony Jennings were active this week, but both were in the low 20s. Let those guys go if you're holding out for hope from these guys. Very disappointed for both of them right now, but let them go. At the linebacker position, boy, we got a lot to talk about here. Welcome back, Robert
Ooh,
Spillane.
the revenge
Um, uh,
game.
Revenge game for Robert Spillane against his old team, the Steelers, and where he was doing hardly anything from a productivity perspective, he had 15 tackles and an interception. Will that continue? I don't know. Was it just overly motivated? Was it the way the Steelers were playing? Don't know. But Spillane has come back to life, which we're glad to see at least. Now there's a big change at the number 2 linebacker role. Christian Ellis, who was the number 2 linebacker and was kind of a cheat code on the defensive line, all of a sudden in the second half, there's this major switch where Jack Gibbons took over that. I'll call that, well, sort of took over that linebacker 2 role, and I'll talk about what I mean by that here in a second. Ellis didn't play a single defensive snap in the second half. Um, Gibbons played 81% of the second half snaps. So in total, Ellis played 35% of the snaps. Jack Gibbons played 44% for the whole game. Now, complicating things with Gibbons was that Marte Mapu played 17% of the snaps. Almost all of those were on third down. Gibbons and Ellis hardly played on third down. So the takeaway from that, well, one more thing I'll throw in there. Kyle Duggar was up to 33% of snaps this week. which climbed up from first 11%, then 25%. So it's slowly climbing up. He played 44% of those snaps down in the box. Outside of Spillane, I don't think we can trust any of those guys. But right now, based on the way the game ended, it feels like it's Spillane number one, Gibbons number two on rundowns, Mapu number two on passing downs, with Kyle Duggar sort of playing this number three linebacker role. That's what it sort of feels like, Shawn. But the only one I'm playing is Spillane right now.
Oh yeah, he's the only one you can. There's just not enough consistency with these snap percentages, these snap numbers. We're looking at 33% for Duggar, 44% for Gibbons, 17 for Mapu. Like, even if you put that over a whole game, it's still not going to increase that much more. But yeah, Christian Ellis and Alex Austin were both benched early in this game. Uh, Bravo's had enough. I assume that is benching going forward. We haven't really got the confirmation on that to hear if Jack Gibbons is now the number two or if this was a
And
one-time
we probably
motivational
won't,
thing. Yeah,
and we
he's not
probably
going to tell
won't
us.
hear, unfortunately. So, yeah, Frabo's not one. He's from that Belichick line. We're not going to get that kind of information. So, play Spillane,
Yep.
which we were getting nervous about after I believe he had 3 tackles in week 2. The rest of it, we're gonna watch and see how this goes.
Yeah, you're not playing Duggar either. It's just still there's not enough snaps there to warrant consistent production. He hasn't done much anyway, but he does profile better up close to the line. So if he were to get 70-80% of the snaps there in that box row as a full-on linebacker, that would be very interesting right there. Bit of a cheat code if he could produce.
Yep.
But
Now,
that's
Chris,
all hypothetical, wait and see kind of stuff. Sorry to cut you
that's
off.
right, and it's still only 44% of the snaps at this point in time. So we're going to
Yeah.
continue to help watch this for y'all. Keep on tuning in, and we'll continue to share as this continues to evolve. Jalen Hawkins, 100% of the snaps. Craig Woodson, 96% of the snaps. Craig Woodson played the most deep. He played 64% of the snaps deep this week. Jalen Hawkins, who played 95% deep in week 2, only played 54% deep in week 3. Now, their numbers were not overwhelming from a tackle perspective this week. It's hard. I know you have a lot more confidence in Hawkins than I do, and in Hawkins over Woodson, but right now, man, I'm struggling to want to play either one of these guys.
I think this was a 1 week outlier here based on the Arthur Smith offense. So a lot of three tight ends, 2 tight ends, even 4 tight ends sometimes. A lot of dink and dunk stuff. So nothing really deep, nothing too crazy, even with Aaron Rodgers. So I feel everybody or Hawkins got to play up close a lot more this week. I would expect him to drop back deeper next week, but neither one overly productive this week for sure. But Hawkins still has that big playability. That's I think what gives him the edge over Woodson, who's still kind of learning on the fly here.
All righty. Moving to the Jets, who played the Bucks, and the Jets played 72 snaps on defense. Let's start with the linebackers here, Shawn. With the injury bugs certainly hit the Jets at the linebacker position. So Jamin Sherwood did play 100% of the snaps, led the team with 11 tackles. Quincy Williams left with an injury after 49% of the snaps. Marcelino McCrary Ball, the number 3 linebacker, came in his place, played 53% of the snaps, but then he left late with what was said to be a hamstring injury. I had typed in my notes as I was preparing for the show starting yesterday. I said, need to watch the injury reports this week. Well, I quickly changed those notes to
I
now
did too.
because Quincy Williams got put on injured reserve, not expected to be out for the full year, but also it sounds like it's going to be more than the minimum of 4 weeks.
Yeah.
McCrary Ball also got put on IR. The Jets signed Mark Robinson, the former Steeler. They signed him off the Patriots practice squad. They also signed Ben Neiman to their practice squad. They have the rookie Francisco
It's
Mauigoa.
Maui Goa.
Mauigoa.
Maui Goa.
He was a late round draft pick, and they have Cam Jones, who was with Kansas City, and everybody was surprised when Kansas City released him, going down on the cuts to 53, and the Jets claimed him during that 53. When things were cut down to 53. So, Shawn, not a
Yeah,
late question by any stretch of the imagination. I think you know what I'm going to ask you. Who's going to be the number two linebacker? Is
I
it going to be Mark
thought you were
Robinson?
gonna.
Is it going to be Maui Gua, however you say his name, the rookie, or Cam Jones?
I thought you were gonna ask me my favorite ice cream. So ignoring that, I assume Maui Goa, just based on him already being with the team the longest. I know he's been. I know he hasn't done much of anything, but I would expect him to be the main guy first. But we're going to see three linebacker sets because they don't have a lot going on at safety either right now. Um,
Yeah,
so
and
who's
we're
going
going
to
to
be the
come to
third guy?
safety in a second. Yeah, exactly.
I
So
assume Robinson could jumper in probably the easiest, just based on his ability, being a former safety too, that he could do some coverage and be a little safer pickup.
I don't think Mark Robinson was a former safety. I think he's been a thumper his entire career, Shawn. I think,
Are you
but
sure?
but he's got the most experience out of all these guys. So is it one of those things that we see Mark Robinson on running down? I'm not, I'm This is one I'm disagreeing with you on. I don't think they're going to play the rookie. I think either Cam Jones plays all three downs, or Robinson plays the running plays, and Cam Jones comes in for the passing games snaps. That's what my gut is. Now watch, they'll call up Ben Neiman from the practice squad too, and they're
Ben
playing the
Neiman's
most.
the one I was worried about the
Yeah,
most, actually
yeah. So
messing up
so
my plan.
so regardless, I don't know if any of these guys outside of Sherwood, of course, we're not taking a chance on. If you're going to the waiver wire, Shawn, and you're going to spend $1 from a fab perspective, because that's about all I would probably spend on a gamble on any of these folks right now.
Mm,
You're going with the rookie, or are you going with Robinson or Jones? Which one are you going with?
I'm gonna take the rookie first. Yeah, if I'm gonna lose that dollar, I'm taking the guy that's been in the system. Um, I looked at some of his college play just before we got on here, mostly to see how to pronounce his name, and it looked pretty sharp, just from what I've seen. But
But at the same time, there's a
still a
reason he
rookie,
was either a sixth or seventh round draft pick, and most of those guys usually only stick with,
because
with the
nobody
team a year or
wanted
two.
to say his name up on stage. They were afraid they were going to get it wrong.
I'm not
but
quite sure that's the case as the reason why.
But these other guys, I mean, they've been pretty much in his shoes too. You know, either undrafted or late round picks as well. So, um,
Well, we'll have an ice cream bet on this one, and we'll have to figure out how we solve that
yeah,
bet. Maybe at the Fantasy Football Expo next year, the loser will have to buy. I'm gonna go with the Mark Robinson for $1.
Mark
That's
Robinson.
and
He was my
I'd put
second choice.
50 cents on Cam Jones. That's how I would do it, I think. But and once again, it's a speculative ad in a deep league where it might
Yeah,
be a little bit desperate and there's just nothing else out there. We've given you several other alternatives earlier in the show to consider, and a few more we're going to talk about here before the show's over with. So this is in really deep leagues. And on top of that, if Quincy Williams is only out, I don't know, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, we just don't know right now. Quincy Williams could come back, or if it is a hamstring McCrary ball, it might be back in 4 weeks.
4 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Believe the earliest projection I've seen for Williams was like week 10.
Oh, week 10. Okay.
That's, but that's just what one article I read said. I don't know how definitive that was.
So there's a lot of internet doctors, some of which do a very good job based on their history and so forth.
Right.
But until we hear more from the Jets, we want to be careful. All righty. If you don't have an injured reserve list, you cut Quincy Williams if it's week 10.
It's
Looks like I may have lost Shawn here for a second. So the answer to that for me would be yes, as a side note. And hopefully we'll get Shawn back here shortly. Okay, moving on to the Jets secondary thing then. Tony Adams was inactive. Malachi Moore, um, he played 100% of the snaps in Tony Adams' absence, but he didn't do much in the box score. He only had 4 tackles. Malachi Moore also played 44% deep. Oh, we've got Shawn back, which is fantastic.
Back.
Malachi Moore only played 44% deep, which we like in terms of that means 56% close to the line of scrimmage, but he just didn't do much for us. Tony Adams, there's a chance he'll be back this coming week as well, so let's not chase Malachi Moore. Andre Cisco continues to play 100% of the snaps for the 3rd week in a row. Sauce Gardner did miss some time. What was interesting, and he did come back in the game, but why I want to call this out is Azariah Thomas, the rookie from Florida State, was the person who replaced him on the outside. But what was interesting, there was a trade today. You mentioned this name earlier that you streamed. Jarvis Brownlee, who was playing for the Titans, played 99% of the snaps at cornerback week 1, 87% week 2. Had a bit of an injury, is what I heard, and that's why he sat out week 3. But maybe that was because they were planning to trade him, and this was a kind of fake injury thing. And they traded him to the Jets. And what was interesting is I'm not sure why the Jets went after him. 1, given their cornerback depth, but then 2 is it was done for as simple as a flip of 6th and 7th round picks. Now, granted, Brownlee was only a 5th round pick. Shawn, what are you making of this situation? Because I'm scratching my head because the Jets have Gardner, they have Brandon Stevens, they have Michael Carter, they have the rookie Thomas, who I just talked about, they have Isaiah Oliver, who can play on the cornerback. What's happening here?
Yeah, really good question. I'm not 100% sure on this. It is odd. I do know he was great for IDP starting out this year. He has a problem with penalties. It is
Yes, he does
one of
have
the
a penalty
reasons
problem.
that the Titans got rid of him. But I'm wondering if we're going to see a bunch of defensive backs this week to make up for the lack of linebacker. We sit here and discussed all, who's going to be the next linebacker. What if it's Tony Adams comes back and Malachi Moore and Andre Cisco? We see a bunch of safeties. Then we see, Brownlee and Stevens and all these guys in as well. Or maybe somebody's more banged up than we thought, and we're not been told
Yeah,
the
we're not privy
100%
to the
truth
info.
here. One thing I do want to bring up, and I read several articles in the offseason where Brandon Stevens was actually projected to be cut by a few guys. Like he wasn't gelling well with the system there, and I never heard any more about that. So I wonder if maybe there's more to that going on. It's all speculation right now, but it's an odd move for a team that needs a linebacker to pick up a cornerback.
Yep. And to your point, do they deploy Adams and or Moore closer to the line, as once again back to the whole linebacker situation we're talking about? Something we're going to keep our eyes on. And it'll be interesting to see if Adams is even back this week. So the only other thing I wanted to mention on the
Right.
Jets too is Andre Cisco played 63% of the snaps deep after 71% week 1, 49% week 2. So a lot of variation there. They're adjusting probably based on who they're playing. And we'll see how this plays out. And Brandon Stevens, they did sign him to a big fat contract in the offseason as a free agent for the Ravens. And people were surprised how much they gave him. So maybe there is something to that as well, Shawn. Now, moving to the Dolphins, who only played 60 snaps against the Bills, so a very low number. Zach Zeeler, starting on the defensive line, was up from the mid 70s to up to 82%. He finished with 5 tackles. Now, right now, a bunch of Dolphins fan, including you, wish there was one less snap that he did play, and I believe it was on a punt when he had the kicker, which turned the whole game around and really put the Bills in the driver's seat. Sorry, man, I couldn't resist. Um,
I'm just happy we had the lead at the beginning of the game, so that was cool. We should try that more often.
that's some great feedback for teams. Try to play with the league. That's good, Shawn. That's why you're the guru. That's why the IDP expert
Right.
here, man. All right. So Jaden Phillips and Bradley Chubb were slightly up in their snap counts. They both had 3 tackles each. Jalen Phillips looked much more active and which was great to see. Now
Yeah,
maybe it's just because Ricky got to watch a whole game with Jalen Phillips, but I like what I was seeing there. Bradley Chubb did also get a sack. Chop Robinson at 37% and Matt Judon at 30%. Both their snap counts were down a little bit. Boy, if you haven't chopped Chop Robinson from your team, it's time to chop him and send him to waivers. Did I do enough chop bad analogies there, or bad puns or whatever you want to call it? I guess I did, because I couldn't even get you to laugh. All righty, um, but there's a little bit of hope for Jalen Phillips here based on what I saw. But I'm not going to go crazy. But if someone drops him in a league, once again, one of these leagues, depending on what I have on my bench, he might be with someone I'm willing to substitute in, Shawn.
he's out there in a few of them, and I mean, if you just lost Nick Bosa, I mean, you could do worse than Jalen Phillips right now. At least he's getting the playing time. We're not seeing the sacks take off just yet, but in fact, either one of these guys, even Bradley Chubb, is
I think as Chubb has 3 sacks in fairness.
he has a
I think he
sack in
does.
each game this
Yep.
season. So that's he's doing well. I mean, the tackles aren't
He's
massive or anything, but
Yeah, he's
either
not
one
given
of
us
these
much
guys
more
are
than the
working.
sacks for the most part. Chubb hasn't
Right,
been.
right. But to Jalen Phillips, he's given us some tackles with no sacks. So either one of these guys, I think you could pick up and potentially play. They both look good, like they're both comfortable out on the field. So expect both these guys to pick up production.
Now, moving to the linebacker position, this is not a bet I would have put in Vegas at the beginning of the year, but I was very pleasantly and maybe even very pleasantly surprised to see. Guess who's second in the league in tackles?
Tyrell Dotson.
Tyrell Dodson, who the Seahawks cut free,
Mm-hmm.
but is playing 100% of the snaps. He's wearing the green dot.
Revenge
He's
game.
Yeah, plus the revenge game this week where he had 11 tackles this past week and also had a sack and a pass defense, so had an incredible week. So Tyrell Dodson, another one of those names like Mac Wilson, although Dodson's being even more productive than Tyrell Dodson, someone maybe you can get cheaper than you might think. You might want to do some fishing around in some of your leagues there. Jordan Brooks disappointingly only had 4 tackles. Now, similar to the Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper situation, we have 2 good linebackers. Well, good. Let me rephrase that. 2 linebackers playing 100% of the snaps. Not every week, both of them are going to get those 8, 9, 10 snaps as tackles as we talked about. And this was one of those weeks where Dodson dominated and Brooks did not. Moving to the secondary, Minka Fitzpatrick, 5 tackles this week. Ashton Davis, 4 tackles in pass defense. Both of them played 100% of the snaps. Now, once again, they only played 60 snaps. Melifonwu was inactive due to injury, and that led to Ashton Davis playing 100% of the snaps. It still appears that Melifonwu, if healthy, would be the starter over Ashton Davis. If Melifonwu is active, though, I don't think we're playing either one of those guys until we see how it plays out. Dante Trader, the rookie from Maryland, only played 22% of the snaps. So if you saw him make a few plays, which you may have seen on the field, don't get too excited about it. Minka is still only playing 50% of the snaps deep, which is fantastic. Still like the upside capabilities. Unfortunately, only 5 tackles on 60 snaps this week. Ashton Davis played 53% deep. So that's how those two shake out in terms of deep playing this past week. At least I'm not giving up on Minka Fitzpatrick. Shawn, are you giving up on Minka Fitzpatrick?
Oh, absolutely not. This is just low snaps, and Tyrell Dodson was running around making all the stops. So with his utilization, the way they're moving him around everywhere, I'm keeping him in there. He's a top safety this year.
Right. Moving to the Ravens, and we're trying to pick up the pace a little bit, Shawn. Boy, this defense is much worse than we expected, and they played 68 snaps against the Lions. We alluded to the 2 long 95-plus yard drives the Lions had against the Ravens defense. Nnamdi Madubuike was inactive due to injury. No word yet for week 4. Broderick Washington, John Jenkins, and Brent Urban picked up the slack. John Jenkins had 8 tackles, but he's not someone we're chasing, folks. Okay. He's in his 30s, and that may have been a career high in terms of tackles for him. Kyle Van Noy was also inactive, but with that very interesting on the edge. Tavius Robinson was up from 66 to 79%, although he didn't do much in the stat category. Mike Green jumped up from 62% to 76%. Odafe Owe was down from 56% to 41% with Kyle Van Noy not playing. Not a good sign for Odafe Owe, folks. So we were already concerned when we saw Tavius Robinson and Van Noy playing more than him, and now even worse, Odafe Owe droppable if he hadn't dropped him yet. Now, just like Vince Carter, for those that are NBA fans in the slam dunk contest, when he's like, it's over, it's over. The linebacker 2 battle appears to be over with the Ravens, although the way they got gashed, maybe not. But I'm going to assume for now it is, as because they didn't make any subs during the game. Teddy Buchanan played 94% of the snaps. At linebacker, Trenton Simpson did not play a single snap on defense. Of course, Roquan played his usual 100% of the snaps. Roquan had 7 tackles and a quarterback hit. Buchanan had 8 tackles. By the way, Roquan is 3rd in the league in tackles with 32. Just as a side note, Shawn, I'll save you the hard question on that one. Malachi Starks played 100% of the snaps. Kyle Hamilton played 99% of the snaps. Hamilton led the team in tackles with 9. Starks had 8. Starks, his snap count in terms of free safety, he was only at 59%, which is his lowest so far. Kyle Hamilton only played 39% deep as well. So a little bit closer to the line, of course, the way Gibbs and Montgomery were running the ball and they ran for over 200 yards. That's probably what happened. They were pulling them both closer to the line of scrimmage, but they also got burned on some passes as well. Marlon Humphrey continues to be the slot cornerback for the Ravens. He did miss a snap or 2, but came back into the game. But going back to Teddy Buchanan, linebacker 3 at this point, or is that a little bit on the high side for you, Shawn?
That's a little higher than I'm willing to give him just yet. But if he keeps up the playing time and the production, easily.
Yeah, very excited about the Cal rookie. And during the offseason, they talked about how excited they were, but they were still also singing the praises of Trenton Simpson as well.
Yeah.
But boy, it looks like the Trenton Simpson train has left the station. This is probably the best way of putting it right now. Got a Vince Carter and a train analogy on a linebacker. Okay,
For free, guys.
Moving to the Bengals, who only played 60 snaps against the Vikings. Once again, this was a serious blowout. A lot of people are going to get excited. They're going to look at that Chris Jenkins line: 6 tackles, 1.5 sacks. Shawn, what are we going to tell them?
Don't do it. Leave him
Don't
on the
do it.
bench or waivers. Yeah, don't chase it. Don't chase
Yeah,
it.
he only played 48% of the snaps, and he was actually 3rd among Cincinnati defensive tackles in terms of snaps played. That's just Cincinnati defensive tackles, folks. Don't chase it. Trey Hendrickson, disappointing with only 1 tackle. Of course, after the Falcons abused the Vikings O-line in week 2, I know some people were hoping for a little bit more productivity out of Hendrickson, but they may have forgotten that Christian Darrisaw was coming back and protecting the blind side, and Carson Wentz, who doesn't hold the ball nearly as long as J.J. McCarthy, but the rookie was going in a quarterback. So that kind of hurt things as well. Wentz was definitely kind of getting rid of the ball very quickly. So I have a problem right now with Alexa talking to me in the background because she thinks I talked to her. So that's echoing in my ear in the background. Sorry about that. I need to let that finish. Shamar Stewart did not play with that injury that he had. Miles Murphy and Cam Sample basically picked up the slot. Miles Murphy had a sack. We're not chasing Miles Murphy, folks. He should have been off your rosters a long time ago in Green Dynasty. Linebackers, we have some concerns in Cincinnati. Logan Wilson only played 78% of the snaps, and this wasn't just because of the blowout. And Barrett Carter played 33% of the snaps. Logan Wilson and Barrett Carter rotating earlier in the game, and there was no indication of any injury. Wilson only finished with 5 tackles with that snap count. Carter, who played a lot less, finished with 4 tackles, although I think he may have got one of those on special teams. Demetrius Knight was back up slightly to 69%. Oren Burks was at 39%, and Knight had 6 tackles. Burks had 5 tackles. Are we playing Logan Wilson this coming week, Shawn, based on that rotation? Is this going to be a scare like we had with Servacio Dennis, or we think this is a real risk right now with a new defensive coordinator?
Yeah, this was really strange. I really don't know what to make of it just yet. I'm not going to panic just yet, but my eyes are definitely locked in on this.
I'm not
Um,
playing Logan Wilson this week if I have other options, Shawn.
yeah, it depends on your options. Would be the other part of that. Now, if you're in a really deep league where there's nothing else, then you have to play him. But yeah, if you do have a viable option, I would be fine with that. With benching him, uh, production has been super great anyway this year. So yeah, if you have the option, go ahead and bench him. Keep an eye on this. If it becomes more rotational, then maybe you start cutting him for somebody else.
And then once again, depending on the size of your leagues and how deep it is and what's on the wire
Yeah,
and what you have on your bench. Now, just because we recommend someone, and I always want to call this out, and I should do it more often, just because we say someone could be a waiver wire pickup, it doesn't mean that person is necessarily better than what you have on your bench. You do need to evaluate. And sometimes you may not have someone you can drop to pick up these people. Um,
right.
but Barrett Carter in a deep league right now, based on this, he's someone that maybe you try and stash on the end of your bench potentially, folks, and see how this plays out. And if everything returns to normal, like it did with Servacio Dennis, well, cut Carter and look for some other high upside person. But right now, it might be worth a shot. Moving to the secondary, Jordan Battle and Geno Stone both played 100% of the snaps until it got late and they got pulled in the blowout. Which was about 8 snaps in total. They both missed. Battle led the team with 7 tackles, but he's still playing extremely deep with 73% of his snaps deep. Geno Stone reverted backwards from a deep perspective, but still not as much as Battle. He only played 67% deep. You're still in, I know, on Battle.
Yep.
Um, and with the linebacker play and the defensive play, there's probably going to be a lot of opportunities for Battle and potentially Stone. Stone's not the best tackler in the world, but for both of them, potentially from a productivity perspective. But I would much rather have Battle over Stone. Let's be really clear, folks. Cam Taylor Britt was out. One of my concerns going into the week would they move Dax Hill outside, hurting his productivity. He still wasn't very productive, but he did play. He still was the primary slot person. Josh Newton played 100% of the snaps, and he ended up playing on the outside in Cam Taylor Britt's stead with him being injured. Moving to the Steelers, who played the Patriots and played 74 snaps. Derek Harmon played his first professional game. He played 47% of the snaps, and he got his first sack in this game, which was really exciting to see. Cameron Hayward played 74%, Keanu Benton 65%. Hayward had a hell of a game. 6 tackles, a sack, a pass defense, a forced fumble. Amazing at his age how darn productive he is and how motivated he stays and so forth. They did give him a little bit more money. He probably should have gotten more, but boy, he's playing well. The thing about Harmon, I'd say, while he only played 47% of the snaps in his first week back, I can easily see him as he gets his legs under him coming back from this injury, getting up into that mid 60 to mid 70 range, just like Hayward and Benton play. And if he can keep some of this productivity up, he could be another one of these interesting stashes for interior defensive linemen. Now, going to the line, or let me rephrase that, the edge position, Alex Highsmith was out with injury. So Nick Herbig, who we loved and we talked about, and Shawn, you were really high on him. He ended up playing 82% of the snaps. Jack Sawyer only played 15% of snaps. Marvin Leal, 18%. TJ Watt, of course, played 85%. Watt had 5 tackles and 2 sacks and a fumble recovery. Welcome to 2025, TJ Watt. Glad to have you join us this year. Nick Herbig only had 2 tackles, but he had 4 quarterback hits, a sack, and he forced the fumble that Watt ended up recovering. We love us some Nick Herbig if he is out there on the waiver wires, particularly until Alex Highsmith returns. Now, at linebacker, we had some big changes, Shawn.
Yeah.
And Patrick Queen played the typical 100%, but you and I even talked about it in the start sit show, I believe it was, or maybe even both shows, both Start Sit and this show, we were talking about how the Steelers running game was getting gouged. We were concerned about would it impact Queen, would it impact Peyton Wilson. We expressed reservations about Peyton Wilson. We talked about Cole Holcomb potentially, and lo and behold, our crystal ball was pretty darn good on this. Holcomb played 50% of the snaps. Peyton Wilson was all the way down from 86% of the snaps down to 47%. So they had a little bit of a rotation thing going, it looked like, with Holcomb more in first and second downs and Wilson maybe more in third downs. Holcomb had 6 tackles. Peyton Wilson had 5 tackles. Shawn, what are we doing with Holcomb and Peyton Wilson right now?
If you have Peyton Wilson, you are benching him. If you have room, you're picking up Cole Holcomb, putting him on your bench, but you're probably not starting either one
And the
until
Steelers
somebody separates here
and the
because this is a
Steelers
rotation.
the
Sorry.
Steelers' history at that linebacker 2 position has been to do the rotation, and I was on the bandwagon that, by gosh, Peyton Wilson is going to put this to an end. And he did start that way for 2 games. And not so much here in game 3, but depending on how Cole Holcomb played, how he grades out, maybe they're like, hey, let's go back to Peyton Wilson. We'll see. But right now, you can't play either one of these guys. But Shawn's guidance was spot on. We're not playing Peyton Wilson, but we're trying to stash Cole Holcomb potentially where we can. Now, defensive back, boy, more changes here. Holy cow. Juan Thornhill down to 39% of the snaps with no mention of injury. Jabril Peppers, almost said Julius, very different person. Jabril Peppers, who the Patriots surprisingly released earlier in the year, played 58% of the snaps. Chuck Clark, disappointingly, only played 76% of the snaps. Each of those 3 had 6 tackles. Now, on top of that, of course, he said the same thing last week, but Coach Mike Tomlin said Deshaun Elliott has a chance to come back and play this week as well. The safety position for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Shawn. Going to Vegas right now. Which 2 players are going to be starting and playing the majority of the snaps at safety this coming week?
Oh my gosh. So I don't know if this was the Jabril Peppers revenge game. Hey, I'm going to let you decimate your old team. Here you go. Or if this was a full on changing of the guard here.
And I'm going to give you another data point because I'm going to give my same
I need it. I need it.
Chuck Clark played 73% of the snaps deep, and he was the one that was seen as the Deshaun Elliott replacement. Jabril Peppers only played 7% of his snaps deep.
Yeah.
He played 61% in the box, 33% in the slot.
I'm going to say it's probably those 2 for me. It's probably Clark and Peppers, assuming Elliott is out.
Yeah, yep. I'm thinking Thornhill's going to the bench. If Elliott is out, then I think it's Peppers playing closer to the box and Clark playing more deep. So I think that's how that's going to play out.
And if Elliott comes back,
if Deshaun Elliott comes back, I'm probably not playing any of them. But if I were betting, Clark goes to the bench, Peppers continues to play close to the line, Elliott moves to that free safety role, which isn't Elliott's strength. And when he's played in that kind of role, his stats have been way down. The Steelers, when they re-signed him, it was because he was playing that box safety and being very effective. But my gut tells me Mike Tomlin loves him some Jabril Peppers. And I think Peppers is going to be the one to benefit for this. And Peppers is one that I am targeting from a free agency perspective. Not to necessarily put him in my lineup this first week, but he's definitely someone I'm targeting. Love it or hate it, Shawn?
It sounds very sound. Very good sound reasoning there. I don't hate it.
We'll see how the crystal ball plays out, but that's Ricky's crystal ball for today, folks. All right, moving on to the Browns, who played the Packers, and we talked about how they blew that game earlier. Played 66 snaps. Another team that played 66 snaps on defense. Wow. Good news, Myles Garrett was up to 80% in week 3. Of course, week 2 was a blowout, so he didn't play quite as much. No other real major changes on the defensive line. Mason Graham did have half a sack. He continues to flash. Someone to keep an eye on in defensive tackle required leagues, but not someone to play yet right now. Malik Collins, who I know you have a thought about, 5 tackles and 1.5 sacks. But what do you want to tell our audience about Malik Collins, folks? Shawn?
I will say this: you don't want to chase this. However, Malik Collins is one of those guys. If you'd like to stream your defensive tackles, he's one of them to get back to ever so often
In the right matchup.
in the right matchup. Yep.
But how do you do in his first 2 weeks, Shawn?
Not very good. Not very good at all.
And you want to
Goose eggs,
define
if
what
I'm
not
not
very
mistaken.
good means?
Zeros, if I recall correctly.
I believe there were zeros or maybe one tackle, but it was pretty limited.
Yeah.
So he does have that boomer bust capability. Once again, depending on matchups and that interior offensive line, who they're playing, and the type of quarterback, is it a young rookie versus a veteran, things along those lines. If that's where you play Malik Collins, but otherwise, we're not chasing this past week's stats. But Carson Swessinger, 10 tackles and a sack. The rookie continues to play extremely well. Devin Bush has creeped up to now 83% of the snaps from 75 to 79. Continues to be very productive in these snaps. 7 tackles this past week, Shawn. He's at least a linebacker 4 right now.
Yeah, deep leagues, he's on your team. But he's closing in on some of this LB3 talk here, for sure. Very consistent. There's no sign of a suspension in sight. And the rest of this team is, especially this front, is working so well that he's given plenty of production for us. So, yeah, startable.
So Grant Delpit was one of these folks who we've talked about, who hasn't been making big plays, but typically has a lot of tackles because he plays so much close to the line of scrimmage. In fact, this past week he played 77% close to the line of scrimmage, which is right in line with 79% weeks 1 and 2. He hadn't been producing. And remember that thing earlier we were talking about during the Jared Verse discussion about stick with the guys you trust, don't give up on it too quick. Well, I benched Grant Delpit in 2 leagues, one of which was for Eric freaking Murray, which I know I should know better, but I lost my patience even though he's a former LSU guy. And lo and behold, he has an incredible game, leading the team, or near the top, I'm sorry, second in the team with 9 tackles plus an interception with that great utilization. Once again, don't give up on some of these folks too soon. Delpit will typically give you that floor with some occasional upside. That's what you get with Grant Delpit. Miles Harden to wrap up the Browns. He was the primary slot cornerback for the Browns, but not someone we're going after, Shawn.
Nah, the production isn't there for these guys.
Moving to the AFC South and the very disappointing Houston Texans, who play the Jaguars and played 70 snaps on defense. That was after 80 last week. The offense is atrocious right now, which is leading to a lot of defensive snaps for the Texans, which should bode well for their players. We have a lot to talk about here with Houston, though. On Twitter, I believe it was Lance Zerline, but it could have been one of their others. Maybe it was Aaron Wilson. I can't remember, but it's someone who follows the Texans closely. He talked about how he had watched the Texans Week 2 game, talked about how the defensive tackles were just getting bullied around and how the linebackers were also getting pushed around as well. So I was interested to see how the snap counts played out. And both Sheldon Rankins went down from 61 to 47. Tim Settle down from 59 to 43%. Tommy Togiai, who played 0% weeks 1 and 2, actually played 40% here in week 3. We're still not chasing any of those guys. Unfortunately, on the edge, Daniil Hunter only had, I think it was 1 quarterback hit, didn't do much, but Will Anderson had 4 tackles and a sack. We're still playing both of those guys. Aziz Al-Shahir, and Shawn, I'm going to come to you for your opinion on this here. He remained at 100% of the snaps and had 8 tackles to lead the team. But Henry To'o was down from 96% to 89%, and he only finished with 4 tackles. Christian Harris played the other 11%, which ended up being about 8 snaps. EJ Speed played 13% of the snaps, but it looked like when I was watching the game, he was playing more of that third linebacker role, not really in place of To'o. Do you think we're going to have a changing of the guards here at the number 2 linebacker spot? Do you think we're going to see Christian Harris moving in for To'oTo'o, or this was just maybe a warning signal to To'oTo'o? Is this another one of these Servasia Dennis, Deion Jones situations? What do you think, Shawn?
Yeah, I'm not concerned over this one just yet. This feels more like we're just trying to see what we can get. It was a close game. It was a tight game at that point. So if they were going to make a switch, they would have just completely done it, I think, and not kind of went rotational there. Yeah, I'm not concerned just yet, but my interest is peaked a bit, so we'll keep an eye on that one.
Boy, on the one hand, I want to think it's similar to Servasia Dennis and Levante David. I mean, excuse me, and Deion Jones, and we're
Yeah,
getting a little bit worried over nothing. But D'Amico Ryans, the head coach of the Texans, loves him some Christian Harris. He really does. And of course, Harris has been having those injuries. And this one feels a little bit different, where Servasia Dennis is the younger guy, Deion Jones is the older veteran who they signed during training camp, all that kind of stuff. This one to me feels a little bit different. Depending on my options, I don't think I'm playing toe this week, and I'm actually trying to stash Christian Harris um, if he's available. And I'd stash him over Cole Holcomb, to be honest with you. Would you? Which one would you stash, Harris or
wow.
Holcomb, Shawn? I think you're
Uh,
probably on the other side of that.
yeah, I'm definitely on the other side of that, just because we've already seen the big rotational implications where this one was just eight eight snaps compared to half the game. So yeah, I'm definitely on the opposite end of that coin there.
Okay, I if I was going to
I
Vegas,
understand where you're coming from though. I definitely get it. I'm just concerned that we haven't seen Harris get in there yet. And for as much as D'Amico Ryans talks him up, he's had the offseason, the first couple games to really get him in there and chose not to. So I don't know what to think here.
if you want to, if I was going to Vegas and placing a bet, and then we'll move on to the secondary. I'm going to Vegas, and I'm saying that Al Shahir is injured or suspended, and Toto gets benched. And when we're about week 13, it's going to be Speed and Harris as two starting linebackers for Houston.
That's bold to think Harris isn't injured there too.
Oh, okay, that's a fair point as well. All right, let's talk about the Texans secondary. Boy, we definitely need to pick up the pace, man. Um, Shocking on Tuesday, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson gets released. Um, with him and his attitude and all, something must have happened behind the scenes, given he played 93% of the snaps this past week. Looks like MJ Stewart is the starter for this week. Jimmy Ward was taken off the commissioner's exempt list this week, but put immediately on PUP,
Yeah.
not eligible to play this week. I think it's MJ Stewart this week in the Gardner Johnson role, and next week it becomes Jimmy Ward. Shawn?
Jalen Mills was the other name I heard tossed around off the practice squad. So
That is a
that's
great point. It slipped my mind completely. He did play with them some in the preseason, and Jalen Mills. That's a great name, and I take my projection back. I think Mills starts over MJ Stewart. That's a good call out, Shawn.
probably a bit of rotational. I could see Stewart playing this week, but I would be scared going forward to trust anybody, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I'm not playing either one this week. I just think in terms of who's going to be playing, that's kind of the thought process. But you're right.
Yeah.
I don't think we take the chance with any of these guys this week until we see a little bit more how this plays out. Moving to the Jags, who played 63 snaps against the Texans. Not really much on the defensive line to talk about. At linebacker, Foye Oluokun played 100% of the snaps, which is continuing, which is great, but he only had 6 tackles. Really worried about Foye Oluokun, his age catching up, etc., with only 6 tackles. Devin Lloyd played 68% of snaps after 70% last week. He had 6 tackles and a fumble recovery. We'll stop talking about Ventrell Miller now that he's only played 5% of the snaps this week again. So we can forget about him and all that noise that the Jags coaches and pain they put us through, particularly in week 1. At the safety position, Andrew Wingard played 100% of the snaps played and got 6 tackles. Eric Murray, who killed me, only 89% of the snaps. He missed a little bit of time because of a penalty, and he was shaken up. Only 4 tackles. Darnell Savage was released. Antonio Johnson played his third safety role that Savage was playing, but played roughly the same percent of the snaps at 41%. Travis Hunter played 68% of the snaps on defense, 53% of the offensive snaps. He played 98% on the outside, 2% in the slot. Now, Jerry Jones only played 2 snaps. Monteric Brown did not play. Both of those could be potentially back this coming week. So it'll be interesting to see, does that mean Hunter plays more on offense, particularly the way their offense is struggling. Love the way Jordan Lewis is being used and played, and very productive and used a lot in the slot. And he's out there in 2 wide at the outside corner and then moves to the inside, playing 100% of the snaps. Love us some Jordan Lewis. If for some reason he happens to be there in your league, you're picking him up. Moving on to the Titans against the Colts. And Shawn, we'll be talking about linebackers here with you. Devondre Sweat went on IR. We're not chasing Sebastian Joseph Day or James Lynch. We don't want any of those guys. Draymond Jones, his snap count dropped from 72% to 47%. Huge drop. Arden Key was up 38% to 47%. This was a blowout game. Don't know if that was because of performance situations or the blowout, but still stay away from both of those guys. At linebacker, Cody Barton, 100% of the snaps, but only 6 tackles. Granted, only 57 snaps. The real story, we've been talking about it, been paying attention to the show, or even if you pay attention to the start-sit show, Cedric Gray went from 93% to 56% of the snaps. He still had 6 tackles on that, so if you played him, you got lucky. Kaiser White was called up on the practice squad. Another reason to listen to Start Sit Show. We talked about that because he was called up on Saturday from the practice squad to be active. He only played 35% of the snaps, 3 tackles, but Gray lost those snaps to White. Shawn, is that the beginning of the end for Cedric Gray? And do we expect Kaiser White, if not this week, the following week, to be playing basically almost 100% of the snaps next to Cody Barton?
Yeah, yeah, he's slowly taking over, and the Titans have really nothing to play for, so they're trying probably anything except putting James Williams in there. So
Yep. And James Williams was ruled
inactive.
inactive for the game, and he was not injured. And so you can cut bait on James Williams. You
Yep.
can give up on him. Moving to the safety position, we had another mess at the safety position. Now, granted, it was a blowout, but I'll explain what I mean. Amani Hooker played 84% of the snaps before he left due to the blowout. Okay. His deployment was fantastic as he was 71% close to the line of scrimmage. Xavier Woods only played 68% of the snaps. Quandre Diggs played 58% of the snaps. Diggs had only played 7% of the snaps the week before. And the fact that Hooker played up to 84% leads me to believe that the coaching staff was upset with Woods and actually substituted Diggs in for Woods. But I don't have any proof of that. That's what my gut is saying based on the numbers, and I haven't been able to get any more information from some of the Titans beat writers. Okay. Kevin Winston Jr., the rookie draft pick, highly thought of coming out of Penn State, the 3rd-round pick who had an ACL injury in college. It's now been over a year, is slated to be back this week after being limited in practice the last couple of weeks. Shawn, who's going to start at safety next to Amani Hooker this week?
Just for fun, I'm going to say Quandre Diggs.
There's a reason they re-signed him, and I would not be surprised if he does start over him. We're not playing Woods. We're not playing Diggs.
Mm.
Winston, if I'm hurting at safety, I'm stashing Kevin Winston once again in a deep league kind of thing, because I think Kevin Winston is going to be an absolute stud, Shawn, and I think he will take over the number 2 position next to Hooker, and Diggs will go back to the number 3 spot.
This team is terrible right now. They have no reason not to go ahead and play the rookies and see what they have. In fact, right now, probably Amani Hooker's the only one I feel safe starting on this entire defense.
Not even Jeff Simmons?
Production
Not
really
even
hasn't
Cody
been there.
Barton?
Cody Barton, deep leagues, I'm probably playing, but I don't feel great about it.
Right. Now, to your point on the Winston thing, that's what's counterintuitive about this Kaiser White thing. You would think they would play the
Right.
younger guy and see what they have with him, but maybe they figured out they don't have anything, and and maybe the coaches are feeling like they're coaching for their jobs at this point in time.
They are. It's a
And
terrible team.
Exactly. And the head coach Callahan has given the offensive play calling to his assistant. So maybe they think White can help them to win games. So we shall see. Moving on to the Colts, who played 70 snaps against the Titans. Once again, a blowout game, so we got to be careful takeaways. We saw DeForest Buckner down to only 57% of the snaps, but luckily got 5 tackles and quarterback hit. That was driven by the blowout. At the edge position, all 4 of the edges played in the 50% range. Latu played 56%, Pay played 50%, Ebicon played 51%, Taekwon Lewis played 54%. Taekwon Lewis had 3 tackles and 2 sacks against that horrible Titans offensive line with J.C. Latham not playing and a rookie quarterback. Are we chasing Taekwon Lewis? This is an easy answer.
No,
Shawn?
no.
The answer is no. That is correct. Now at linebacker, Zaire Franklin played 99% of the snaps, but once again, only 7 tackles. Similar to Foye Oluokun, with Franklin having an offseason surgery, the new defense, more man-to-man in coverage versus zone. Really worried about Zaire Franklin, someone I'd say try and trade high, quite frankly. Joe Bacci at the number 2 linebacker position, Shawn, only 47% of the snaps. He only played 11% of the third down snaps. He did at least get us 5 tackles. Jalen Carleys has a chance to come back after week 4. Is Carleys, if someone dropped him because they didn't have injured reserve spots, is Carleys someone you're going to go after and put on your bench?
If I have the spot, yes, because it can't get any worse than this right here. And if it doesn't pan out, then you just turn around and drop him for the next best thing.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'll take that chance.
Now in the secondary, Kenny Moore had a calf injury that he picked up after his pick 6. He's expected to miss a couple of weeks. Now, a big deal is made of the fact that Mike Hilton got signed to the practice squad, but my money is on Mekhi Blackman playing that slot position. Mekhi Blackman ended up playing 56% of his snaps in the slot. He only played 49% of the snaps. He went in, played more after Moore left the game, Moore being Kenny Moore. And so Blackman is my expectation, not Mike Hilton, to play in that role. That has been a productive role, something to keep an eye on in cornerback required leagues. Cam Bynum, what can we say? He played 72% of the snaps deep. If he's not getting the interceptions, he's not going to get you much. He had 4 tackles. I think there's probably other safeties you can play other than Cam Bynum, Shawn.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's Nick Cross or nobody out of these guys here.
All right, moving to the AFC West. The Chiefs play the Giants, played 66 snaps. Once again, that number 66. Wow. Chris Jones, either feast or famine. He got a sack this week against that Giants offensive line. He's been mostly famine for production. He's incredible. What he does on the pro football field is great for the Chiefs, but for our fantasy football teams, Shawn, I'm fine letting him go at this point in time.
Yeah, I'm not holding on to him.
Yep. George Karlaftis had a great game against that Giants O-line. 10 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits and sack. Amazing 10 tackles for an edge. But we're not expecting that every week, right, Shawn?
Not every week, but he is on my list of guys to not cut.
Absolutely. He's more of a number 2
Two,
type of edge
yeah,
player. Absolutely right. Ashton Gelati, the rookie from Louisville, playing time continues to increase, played 56% of the snaps this week, but he had
nothing.
0, zilch, nada, nothing, all of those terms from a productivity perspective. Taxi squad guy in Dynasty, not much more than that right now. Nick Bolton had an excellent tackle stats game. That's 2 this year that he's had.
Yeah, 2 solid games for sure.
Question is, will it continue, Shawn?
With as bad as this team looks on offense, as close as these games are getting, I'm drinking the Kool Aid here. I'm on the Nick Bolton slight comeback bandwagon here.
All right, we're not putting him as a number 1 linebacker, but we're feeling a lot
No,
better about him as a number 2 linebacker for sure.
yeah,
All right, so we'll be keeping an eye on things. Of course, he has had one bad one, so we'll see how it plays out. Drew Tranquil's snaps dropped to 79% from 88. Chanel's dropped from 63 to 47. I believe that had to do with the way that they were trying to take Malik Neighbors out of the game, and they successfully did that, playing a lot of defensive backs, including Christian Roland Wallace and Noel Williams. So I do expect, unless they're playing like a Neighbors or someone along those lines, that Tranquil's snaps will return to where they were. Shamari Connor only had 5 tackles despite the great deployment of 86% close to the line of scrimmage and 100% of the snaps. Brian Cook missed some time in this game. He played 58% of the snaps deep that he did play. Jaden Hicks came in and played for him and ended up playing 77% of the snaps, which was fantastic. He only played 37% of those deep, but he only had 1 freaking tackle. Just very disappointing. Now, part of that is the Giants' offense as well, but Cook is expected to play, which means Hicks still won't play a whole lot, and Hicks is still on the waiver wire. On the Chargers, who played 52 snaps against the Broncos, Khalil Mack on IR, Tuli Tuipulotu played 81% of the snaps. He jumped way up. Deion Henley stayed at 100%. People were probably worried about his only 4 tackles. He only played 100% of the snaps, but Shawn, he missed a lot of practice time due to that illness where the week before he fought through it and had a great stat line. But do you think it's the illness that really contributed to this, or was it the 52 snaps, or the Broncos offense, or a combination of all of those?
Yeah, I think it's more just the snaps weren't there this week. He probably got hit with the illness a little longer, so it's probably taking a stronger toll on his body this week. So expect those to come right back up probably this weekend.
Yeah, we're not panicking on him. We're playing
No.
him like normal this coming week. Unless we see a bunch of did not practices again for illness, then we'll be a lot more concerned, but we're not expecting that.
Yeah.
Derwin James, a freaking monster. 96% of the snaps close to the line of scrimmage this past week, all over the freaking place. The way they're using him is phenomenal. 12 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, a sack. Love us some Derwin James. Right now, it's got to be, projected to be the number 1 safety this year. Aloy Gilman played 100% of the snaps, but he played 77% deep. We talked about when he was very productive in week 1, but hard to sustain that for some of these players that aren't as explosive when they're playing that deep. And that showed in his production this week, which was very limited. Tony Jefferson, the old guy, 5 tackles in the pass defense. He played. He played. Come on, Ricky, you should know this. 83% of the snaps, but Elijah Molden's been out. He's been playing in Elijah Molden's stead. If Molden comes back, we're not playing Jefferson. We're probably not playing Jefferson unless it's in the deepest of leagues anyway, and if we're desperate, even if Molden's out. Right, Shawn?
Yeah, only in super deep leagues. His tackle floor is decent. He has some big playabilities there, but yeah, just we're talking really deep leagues.
Now the Broncos, moving to them, who play the Chargers, and they played 86 snaps on defense, and this game did not go into overtime. They had 14 quarterback hits, 5 sacks, and 7 tackles for loss against Justin Herbert, and they still managed to lose the game. Zach Allen continues to play. Yeah, crazy. I know. Zach Allen continues to play roughly in the 80% range of snaps versus the 90% he played last year. Only 2 tackles, only 2 quarterback hits. He should take a productivity hit given a little bit less utilization than last year, but still a little bit disappointed in his production right now, particularly with the way those edge rushers are just attacking the quarterbacks, forcing them to step up into the pocket. And unfortunately, John Franklin Myers is picking up a sack instead of him when they pushed the quarterback up into the pocket. Benito, 2 sacks, 5 quarterback hits. Jonathan Cooper, a sack. Benito, Cooper, and Jonah Ellis each had 4 tackles. Love Cooper, love Benito. We're playing both of those guys on a weekly basis. Alex Singleton played 100% of the snaps. He led the team with 12 tackles. Justin Sternad was at 81%. He had 5 tackles. Dre Greenlaw put on IR, so he'll be out for 3 more weeks at least. We'll see if that calf truly heals and how quickly they do put him back in the lineup. Shawn, Drew Sanders, who they love athletically, unfortunately has been very injury prone. put him on injured reserve with the ability to recall him after week 4. If he's active, if he becomes active, do you think he's going to take over for Justin Sternert, or you going to you think the Justin Sternert train is going to continue to move forward until Greenlaw returns?
Yeah, I think Sternard has it till Greenlaw comes back. That's until Sanders can do anything without getting hurt. It'd be hard to trust him right away, right back into throw him right into a game. Uh, I'm not confident in Sanders. I'm not holding my breath there.
Yeah, I want him to be a thing,
Yeah,
but the injuries are just killing him right now. Over the safety spot, Talanoa Hufanga played 99%. Brandon Jones played 94%. The deep safety roles continue to evolve with them on a weekly basis. This week, Hufanga played a little bit more deep at 67%. Brandon Jones 63%. Um, Jones led the team in tackles this week, where was second on the team in tackles with 11 tackles this week. Brandon Jones had more tackles than Hufanga in week 2. Hufanga only had 6 tackles, but did have 2 pass defenses this past week. But Shawn, both of these guys were playing both Hufanga and
yeah,
Brandon Jones.
yeah. Both these guys are really showing out right now.
At the nickel position, very interesting. Jaquan McMillan jumped from 48% to 70% of snaps, where Barron, the rookie first rounder, dropped a little bit from 23% to 19%. Barron had played 37% in week 1. Shawn, I'm not quite ready to put McMillan into the lineup, but if this continues and the Broncos are playing where teams where they're going to have a lot of 3 wide, I'm getting tempted to put McMillan and take advantage of him just like we did last year in terms of
Yeah,
the playing time and results McMillan had last year.
yeah. Well, they're not playing the Titans and up by a lot of points. They're not really putting in the rookie here, so it's getting safer to roll with McMillan.
All right, and the Raiders played the Commanders, played only 58 snaps. That's the second week in a row for 58 snaps. Max Crosby played 100% of snaps, which is just amazing for an edge player in the way he plays. And as an edge, he led the team in tackles with 7. Malcolm Koontz's playing time went down again from 45% to 40%. Tyree Wilson was up to 38%, up from the 24% last week, which just was abnormally low. Still not sure what happened there. At the linebacker position, Devin White played 100% of the snaps again, had 6 tackles, 2 tackles for loss and a quarterback hit. Jermaine Pratt played 97%, a season high for him, but he played 50% of those snaps on the edge, and as a result, only had 4 tackles, one of which was solo. We've been preaching to folks about Jermaine Pratt. Nothing's changed in terms of our feelings of Pratt, in terms of really don't want to play him if we can avoid it, right, Shawn?
Yeah, if we got an option, we're taking the other option.
Right. In the Raiders secondary, Jeremy Chin and Isaiah Polamao both played 100% of the snaps and had 5 tackles each. Caillou Blue Kelly, who's had a lot of tackles at the cornerback slot because he's been targeted a lot, want y'all to note that he only played 72% of the snaps. Darian Porter came in and played 28% of the snaps. There could be a change in the guards, because the Raiders have been torched in the secondary, and so it's one of those things. Why not try the 3rd-round rookie over the veteran who's bounced around across many teams? So there could be a change in the guard. Darian Porter might be someone who becomes a Zion McCullum type that we might be interested in having, but not quite yet, folks. And with that, we've made it through all 32 teams, Shawn. And I thought we'd actually be shorter this week, and we ended up being longer. So I'm going to do the wrap up really quickly. If you like this show, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. As always, give us your comments, questions, suggestions on the YouTube channel where this show is, and Shawn and I will go in periodically and respond to all of them. And thank you for all that have been doing this to date. Give me a follow at RickyRod66 and Shawn at Shawn8386 on Twitter, on X. As a reminder, I might become a grandparent. If that happens, I will let you know via X related to what will be happening with shows. All right, with that, we'll have the Start Sit show on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central. Come join us. We'll be back next week to discuss week 4, and we'll try and cut it a little bit shorter than this show, but we love giving you all the details. On behalf of Shawn Teague, this is Ricky Roderick wishing you, your family, and your friends great health and happiness. Be kind to one another. We're out of here, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.